I want to try and get to heaven if possible. I'm hearing I'm not doing well.
Hello.
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur and Experian with you guys. The hostages are home. Yes, the 1,700 hostages Israel took from the Palestinian territories in Gaza have been returned. Oh, right, the 20 Israeli hostages too. Sorry, I know their lives matter way more. I was watching American media and I got influenced by it. So, anyways, we're going to break down all of the so-called peace deal, not negotiations, but theoretical treaty. Which will be violated within days by Israel, of course. But nevertheless, we'll break it down for you guys. Whose ass did Trump kiss? Who kissed Trump's ass? Was it a good deal, a bad deal? Is it going to matter at all? So all that is coming up. Now, at 8 o'clock, I'll give you a quick update on crowdsourcing the revolution. Some really great developments recently. But then we've got an interview with someone who was on the flotilla that Israel, of course, kidnapped. He's now back, and he's going to be in studio with us, and then a couple of guests who were victims of Christian nationalism. So really packed show for you guys tonight. So let's get started. Anna.
Well, there is a little bit of good news today, including the hostage release and also the fact that there is some humanitarian aid entering the Gaza Strip. So why don't we give you updates on that and more?
Finally, the emotional, just look at this, guys. Emotional reunions taking place between those freed hostages and their loved ones that they haven't seen in more than 2 years. Finally coming face to face at a military base in southern Israel. Listen.
We also saw more than 1,700 Palestinians from Gaza who were detained over the course of the war, many of them without charge, being returned to the Gaza Strip.
After more than 700 days in Hamas captivity, all 20 living Israeli hostages have been returned to Israel. They have been reunited with family members. And in exchange, nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners and detainees were also released by Israel to Palestine, and in some cases deported to other countries like Egypt. Now, let's first begin with the Israeli hostages. There were about 250 of them taken into Gaza on October 7th, following Hamas's attack on Israel. About 80 of them have died. Many were released, though, in previous prisoner swaps with Israel. And as I mentioned earlier, 20 of them were released and reunited with their family members in Israel today. So now the remaining 20 living hostages, now that they've been freed, Hamas didn't do any big displays or pageantry like they had in previous hostage releases. And the hostages were brought across the border in vans facilitated by the International Red Cross. You're looking at photos of the hostages who were released today. And obviously those videos of them reunited with their family members is touching. It's a little bit of good news in this endlessly horrific, brutal genocide that's been carried out in Gaza. But luckily there's something positive to look at today, and you're looking at it right now, Cenk.
Yeah, so look, both the hostages and their families lived through an excruciating 2 years. Seeing the moms and the dads hugging their sons who have come back is super emotional. Elated that they're back. We always wanted the hostages back, and we're very glad that they're back now. So that's the 20 Israelis. So now I'm going to spend some time on the 1,700 hostages that Israel took from Gaza. Remember, these are not the 250 prisoners. The prisoners are different. They were charged, they were convicted. Yes, Israel runs kangaroo courts where the Palestinians are found guilty 99% of the time, and the IDF and the settlers that do violence are found innocent 99% of the time. By the way, those are literal numbers. So they've got courts in the occupied territory. Inside Israel, they do real courts. In the occupied territories, they do total junk, oppressor, kangaroo courts with mock justice. But the 1,700 that were taken hostage by Israel have never had any charges, even in the kangaroo courts. Even the smallest little charge, and it's a 99% conviction rate. They didn't bother with that because they're just full out hostages. Now, you remember all their plight because American media couldn't stop talking about, American media didn't care about them at all. 1,700 Palestinian hostages to American media meant nothing, zero. All of them combined don't equal one human, not one hostage equivalent, right? Because the American media agrees with Israel. Those Palestinians are subhuman. Their 58-year brutal, disgusting, humiliating occupation is irrelevant. And in fact, it's a good thing to be celebrated. Israel needs to be safe. Israel needs to be safe. And they have to oppress everyone around them to be safe. The 1,700 hostages are never taken into account. And the Palestinians' lives were murdered, 66,000 at least murdered, 10,000 under the rubble. None of it counts, but the 20 actual human being Israelis, those are the humans. The American press and the international press is going nuts. The 20 are back, 20 real human beings, which I agree with. The Palestinians, who cares about them? And by the way, Israel will now take more hostages because they can take more hostages anytime they want, never have to bring any charges, and the American media will bury it and the American government will send them a check for it. So that's what happened today.
So I want to just go back to the Israeli hostages for a minute because as we mentioned, not all of the hostages survived. 20 of the living hostages were returned today. However, Hamas is supposed to also return the remains of the deceased. Now, they did release the bodies of 4 deceased hostages back to Israel. That did cause some outrage because under the terms of this ceasefire deal, and let me just be clear, both parties have accepted the first stage of the ceasefire deal. The rest of it remains vague and kind of up in the air. But under what they did agree to, Hamas was supposed to release all 28 bodies. Obviously, they haven't done that yet. But it was understood even before the agreement was signed that retrieving and returning these bodies would be difficult and would likely take days thanks to the destruction in Gaza. Remember, Gaza has been leveled, and while the Israeli government would like you to think that it's okay, it's only gonna impact those terrible Palestinians, many of whom happen to be minors. Don't worry, our hostages are gonna be okay under heavy aerial bombardment, under a siege, under these starvation conditions that we're implementing and imposing on the Palestinian people. That actually ended up not being the case. So Hamas is apparently trying to find the bodies and return them. And there is an international task force that is going to be charged with recovering the rest of the bodies nonetheless. Now, the Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz said in a statement on X that any delay or deliberate avoidance will be considered a gross violation of the agreement and will be responded to accordingly. Later in the show, we'll talk a little bit more about the tripwires that are kind of baked into this agreement, essentially setting up the Palestinians to fail, for Hamas to fall on one of those said tripwires and give Israelis the excuse to engage in their campaign of annihilation once again. Now, back to the Palestinian prisoners, Cenk is right. This is a common practice by the Israelis. They tend to just detain Palestinians, keep them in prison without charging them with a single crime. So of the nearly 2,000 Palestinians who were released as part of this deal, the vast majority of them had never been charged with a single crime. 250 of them had been tried and convicted of crimes. So there were 250 prisoners specifically. Some were released in Ramallah and Gaza while others were deported to Egypt. Reporters on the ground say the Palestinians were warned not to celebrate their release and they were threatened with arrest if they did. So for all of the Israel supporters on social media who are wondering why people aren't celebrating this ceasefire deal, I mean, some people literally can't celebrate because if they do, they're gonna have to deal with Israeli terror. So among those not released include prominent Palestinians like Hassam Abu Safia. This is a particularly egregious and disgusting case because he's the former director of the Kamal Adwan Hospital in northern Gaza. He refused to abandon his patients and he paid a heavy price for that. Israel detained him and they refused to release him. You also have Marwan Barghouti, a popular leader who was convicted by an Israeli military court of murder charges back in 2004. And again, the other 1,700 people released were Palestinians that had not been taken from Gaza, that had been taken from Gaza by Israeli troops and held without charge. Israeli forces detained thousands of Palestinians during the war in raids on shelters and hospitals, where all the dangerous people hang out, and at checkpoints, stopping families as they fled their homes amid military operations. More were held under laws passed in Israel at the start of the war that allowed Palestinians to be detained for months as unlawful combatants without judicial review or access to lawyers. And if you guys can recall, Israeli prison guards were caught on camera raping some of these Palestinian hostages. And when it appeared as though maybe the Israeli government might punish some of these Israeli prison guards for committing rape, there were protests against it by Israeli civilians. So
because they're pro-rape terrorists. Those people that are protesting are like, oh my God, now we don't get to rape the Palestinians and imprison them for no reason and occupy and steal their land? Anti-Semite.
So Jake, one of the Israeli hostages, Palestinian hostages who was detained by the Israelis was an 18-year-old autistic man you're looking at video of him right now, Omar Yahya al-Kinarawi, and it's hard to imagine that they looked at him, this autistic 18-year-old, and thought, oh yeah, dangerous terrorist. It's just who knows what kind of unspeakable, disgusting things happened to him while he was detained by the Israelis. Another freed detainee was Hitham Salem, who reportedly learned upon his release that, this is a really hard video to watch, so I want to give you guys a warning. Who learned upon release that his wife and children were killed in an Israeli airstrike in Gaza. Take a look. Those are among the videos and images that cannot be unseen. So regardless of how much how much these disgusting billionaire Israel defenders try to buy up our media and pump us with propaganda in favor of Israel, those images and those videos are seared in our minds. And on top of that, you have President Donald Trump, who's like so utterly brazen and open about his corruption and the fact that he does as he's told by his masters like Miriam Adelson. You think MAGA's gonna forget about that? I doubt it, Cenk.
Yeah, we'll see. So, by the way, you'll see that on social media for the minimum being until Larry Ellison buys all of social media on behalf of Israel.
That's the plan.
Right, but you're not gonna see it on mainstream media. Don't be crazy, right? So those are just Palestinians. The mainstream media thinks they're subhuman. Oh, Israel murdered your wife and kid? Well, you had it coming. It was your fault for being a Palestinian. What are you sitting there on Greater Israel, Israeli land that's Greater Israel for? That's Judea and Samaria. Get the hell out. Otherwise, Israel gets to murder all of you. And you're all dirty terrorists anyway, right? That's how American media has treated Palestinians their whole lives, and that's how they're treating them now. So everybody's going crazy over the 20 people that are returned because again, they're real, they're humans. But the Palestinians returned to an absolutely leveled Gaza. We're gonna talk more about it in a minute. 83% of the buildings are gone. Gone. Israel leveled the place. And we're gonna tell you more of the damage that they did a little bit later in the show. And the American media is like, yes, so what though? They're just stupid Palestinians. They're not precious Israelis. In fact, if you think, wait, Cenk, come on, you sound like you're exaggerating. No, Christina Amanpour, for a brief second, made the mistake of being honest. And she said the hostages are being returned. And they had a better fate than some of the people in Gaza. Now that's an empirically true statement. At least 66,000 Palestinians have been murdered, 83% civilian kill ratio, the worst in the world. That means the IDF is worse terrorist than Hamas and any other terrorist group out there. They kill more civilians on average per 100 people, and they did 70 October 7th. So obviously some of the people in Gaza were killed in a terribly unjust way, sniper shots, bombs that had their heads explode, etc. So of course Amanpour had to come out and apologize. And said, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. No, of course Israeli lives are more important. Of course they are. I'm so sorry I even brought up those dead Palestinians. Who cares about them? They're subhuman. Beloved Israel, beloved Israel. She had to apologize. Apologize for saying that maybe the people who were murdered by Israel are worse off. No, shh. That would be like treating the Palestinians as if they're human. Yeah. And that is not allowed in American media. Apologize to Israel, and she did. And every once in a while, they point to Amanpour as like, oh, we even let her on TV. And every once in a while, she'll have like a 0.5% of critique of Israel, and then she'll have to come back out and go, I'm so sorry. Of course, the Israeli lives are more important than the Palestinians. They don't see it. They're so disgustingly racist. Everyone in American mainstream media. That they're like, what do you mean? That Palestinians are terrorists and the Israelis are so moral and beautiful. And they can't see. It's like asking a fish, how's the water? They're like, what water? So you'll excuse me, but nevertheless, we care about all human beings and we don't react in the same way they do. I would genuinely thrilled that those hostages, the 20 hostages are back. Seeing the dad reaction, holding on to his son, I felt great empathy for that. Did one person in mainstream media show the same degree of empathy for a single Palestinian hostage that was returned today?
Nope.
And not 20, but 1,700 hostages, let alone the massacre after massacre after massacre. No, only sympathy towards Israelis, never sympathy towards Palestinians. So, and guys, bottom line is, it's not like, I'm not against the Trump peace deal. I say Hamas should take it. I'm glad they did. I'm glad Trump made the effort. He did, he made an effort, okay? And we're gonna criticize him for him, kissing up to the donors in a minute, but at least he tried on the peace, and we have theoretical peace for however long it lasts, which will be a couple of days. I can't imagine it'll go past 2 weeks. And then Israel will say, the Palestinians made us go back to murdering them, back to taking their land. We had no choice, and everyone on cable news will go, the Palestinians made the Israelis do it. They're the dirty terrorists, savages, kill, 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 kill. And if anybody criticizes Israel, anti-Semite, anti-Semite, ruin your life, ruin your life, ruin your life. No one's allowed to criticize Israel. Now, when I say, hey, I'm so glad those 20 are back, and I'm glad the 1,700 are back. You go on social media, how dare you? I don't even believe you. You have to say that they're more important. They're more important. They're not more important. They're equally important, okay? But Israel doesn't care about Palestinian lives because they're a sick, racist, terrorist government at this point.
There isn't anything on the planet that could get me to apologize to Israel or Israel's defenders. Christiane Amanpour apologizing. I don't know how she could debase herself like that after she said something that was true. I literally can't believe it. I mean, I get it. I mean, you don't want to lose your career. I would rather eat rice and beans for the rest of my life. Anyway, we got to take a break, but when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about what the ceasefire means for the Palestinian people, what the scenes are like as Palestinians attempt to return to their homes in various parts of the Gaza Strip, including the north. Lots to get to, don't miss it, we'll be right back.
Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys and all of our members here because we're going to read member comments during the social break. Let's go to YouTube members first. Michael LaMountain Senior says, statehood for Palestine now. Well, brother, I would love that. And then, God, I'd love to see a safe and free Israel and Palestine. But that's an anti-Semitic position. If you don't agree to Israeli superiority and Israeli oppression and occupation forever and ever and ever, you're an obvious anti-Semite, right? But other than that, but in reality, this is a beautiful audience that cares about all human beings the same. Jews, Muslims, Christians, all the same. Israelis and Palestinians, all the same. We want safety and freedom for all of them. But of course, the American government and media do not. They are deep racists who want Israeli superiority over Palestinians and do propaganda to make sure that happens. No, Palestine's not going to get a state. And Trump is not going to make them. Israel will never allow it because they are racist and terrorists. And our media will cheer to raucous applause. Yes, brutalize the Palestinians. 58 years of occupation. When is it going to be enough, you racists? Al3 Wells says, I'm glad everyone has been released, but how long will this last? I don't see Israel abiding by any ceasefire since their people were returned, and US will not be able to do anything. Oh, you nailed it. Watch, your analysis of this will be better than everyone in mainstream media combined. They're all having nonsense conversations now. The only real conversation to have is, when is Israel gonna break the deal? Right? There's no chance they have 53% of Gaza. Are they gonna withdraw? They're supposed to withdraw from there. They're not gonna withdraw. Everybody knows they're not gonna withdraw. Unless you're a moron who works on cable news. They're like, oh, beloved Israel says they're gonna withdraw. I bet they do. Yeah, right. Like yeah, the Palestinians are guilty. Right? I loathe them. I loathe them. Mad City Miss Kitty writes in, 5 years on Twitch, been a member for longer. You don't stop fighting, I don't stop supporting. Love you guys and everyone in the TYT family. Right back at you, and we never stop fighting. Jacob Saylor says, can't imagine how killing someone's entire family wouldn't radicalize them. Of course, of course. Why is there terrorism in the occupied territories? Because anytime there's massive oppression, it leads to extremism, which leads to terrorism, which is a way of fighting back against power that is counterproductive and immoral, but it will obviously happen in every situation where there's an occupation. If you don't know that, then you're probably working mainstream media. You're like, oh, what's power? So after Palestinians, anyone who doesn't say we should slaughter them is an anti-Semite. That's your only requirement for working in mainstream media. Bunch of idiotic propagandists for Israel. All right, concept of a username says, it's amazing and sad how mainstream media celebrates the bully of the Middle East, as if the bully hasn't tortured people for decades. We're living in a world where bullies are celebrated and their victims are despised. WTF happened to empathy. American mainstream media happened. Propaganda through and through. Those some of the worst people on earth. Embedded Dude said Bibi made the deal to appease the protesters in Israel. Now he's free to proceed with the genocide without resistance. Again, there's a Young Turks member that understands this way better than every single national media reporter. Not one of them will write that, even though it is obviously true. Why? Because they're in the Israeli propaganda business. Back on TYT Jenkins, and also Efmer Long High. So I don't know how to pronounce it, but I do know you're awesome. Thank you for joining through TYT.com. And then Societal Anthropology, thank you for joining through the join button on YouTube. You guys are amazing. We appreciate you. Anna.
All right, well, let's talk about what the Gaza Strip looks like now that there has been a stop in the intensity of bombings by the Israelis. Over the weekend, displaced Palestinians made their journey to the neighborhoods they're from in the Gaza Strip with the hope that they would find their homes in somewhat livable conditions. But as you can see from this video, that wasn't the case for the vast majority of Palestinians. Israel, of course, razed much of the Gaza Strip, and this type of destruction is going to be incredibly costly to reconstruct and will take a very long time to reconstruct. Now, Israeli forces are said to have dropped more explosives on Gaza Strip, which is what, a 5 square mile strip of land, than the amount of explosive dropped on London, Dresden, and Hamburg combined combined in the Second World War.
I have one other amazing fact for you guys. Israel dropped the equivalent of about 6 atomic bombs on Gaza. So that's the size of the bombs dropped on Hiroshima, based on kilotons dropped in Gaza, the equivalent of about 6 nuclear bombs in Gaza. So Randy Fine got his wish. They were basically nuked, but through a great number of bombs, and that's why you're seeing the mass destruction there. And obviously that is not targeted, that is collective punishment. That is why the government of Israel are literal terrorists.
So let's hear from the Palestinians who returned to their neighborhoods and discuss what they found.
Entire families erased, entire cities wiped out.
We've been displaced for 2 years, living on the sidewalks with no shelter and nowhere to save. I just want to reach my home. God willing, things will be better. I'm happy about the truce and peace, even though I'm a mother of a son and a daughter who were killed, and I grieve for them deeply.
Fida Haraz is hoping to find her home, but she can't even tell where her street once was.
I'm walking in the street, but I don't know where to go. I don't know where the crossroads are or where my home is. A house of multiple floors, but nothing is left.
I did not find a home, or our neighbor's home, or a relative's home. All the relatives that near me no longer have homes. All is gone. Everything was destroyed. There are no homes or life.
When I was told in the morning that my home was gone, I didn't know what to do. I was already crying for my siblings that I lost. How can I come back and not find them waiting for me?
Just absolutely devastating. Just to clarify, Gaza is 141 square miles long, I believe, and 5 square miles wide. So I just wanted to correct that error I made earlier. Now, more than 500,000 Palestinians have returned to Gaza City since the ceasefire went into effect to find total devastation. So the United Nations Satellite Center estimated that 83% of all structures in Gaza City had been destroyed or had some damage by late September. So that's Gaza City. The number jumps up to 93% when it comes to residential buildings and structures throughout the Gaza Strip. So around 2 million Palestinians in Gaza are now homeless thanks to 2 straight years of IDF terrorism. Now, most of Gaza's crops and vegetation have also been destroyed. 97% of tree crops, 95% of shrubs, and 82% of annual crops are gone. Just complete annihilation in the Gaza Strip. Gazan Shireen Abul Yakani says some 61 million tons of debris I'm sorry, this is from Reuters. 61 million tons of debris will need to be cleared across the territory, the equivalent of 25 Eiffel Towers by volume, according to the UN. This is the UN's Environment Program. And according to estimates by the World Bank, rebuilding Gaza will cost more than $50 billion. Now, we, the American taxpayers, have bankrolled the destruction in Gaza, and it remains to be seen how much we're going to be expected to pay for the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip. But for those who survived Israel's aggression and genocide, those people actually end up being the more fortunate ones in this entire scenario in the Gaza Strip, because nearly 68,000 Palestinians have been killed in the Strip. As of Sunday, the health ministry's violent death toll has reached 67,806, and the number of wounded has reached 170,066, meaning at a minimum, 237,872 Palestinians have been killed or injured in Gaza following the October 7th, 2023 Hamas attack on Israel. The figure represents more than 10% of Gaza's pre-war population of 2.3 million. But even that is expected to be an undercount. And I'll tell you why, because guess what? Some bodies have already been recovered from under the rubble now that a ceasefire is in effect. But wait till I tell you just how many Palestinians remain missing and are presumed dead. Before I do that, Cenk, any thoughts?
Yeah. So as they were leaving, they started setting the place on fire. Of course they did, because they're terrorists. So the IDF, if they didn't set the place on fire, they'd leave messages for the Palestinians who came back to their homes. Things like, enjoy sluts, and we'll be back. So just to further terrorize the innocent civilian population, because they're the IDF. They're the world's largest terrorist organization. So they lit the sewage plant on fire so that more disease would spread, so that more young children would die from that disease. Why? Because they're the IDF, the world's largest terrorist organization, and we fund them. We give them money to be terrorists like that.
Yeah.
And now, will Israel be forced to pay the $50 billion in damage they did? Of course not. They never pay for their own crimes. They never pay for anything, right? Second of all, if they had to pay anything back, they would just say, we're not gonna pay it. Hey, America, our errand boys, give us money. Shut up, you anti-Semites. You're all hateful bigots unless you hand your wallets over. Let's go, America, give me your wallets. Now you're paying for this, okay? Because we already paid for the genocide. We already spent $21 billion in the middle of the genocide. Normally we give them $4 billion a year. Why? No one ever explains it other than special ally. I don't know what that is other than propaganda. And they say, no, you owe us. Not only you owe us $4 billion a year, now you owe us $21 billion for the genocide. And the cleanup, the $50 billion cleanup, we are not doing it at all, okay? It's our job to murder and destroy. It's not our job to clean up. And if anybody's gonna clean up, Americans, let's go, you anti-Semites. Hurry up, give me the money and get to work, okay? And 200 are already sent to Israel, and God knows how many more will be sent later because we don't have American sovereignty. We have Israel running this country.
Yeah, we do. Now keep in mind again that the death toll figures are considered an undercount. There have been several studies showing that there is an undercount. For instance, there are some studies showing that the undercount is by as much as 40%, which is insane. And if that is proven after all the bodies are recovered from under the rubble, that would mean that close to 100,000 Palestinians were killed by the Israelis. Now, the estimate also, keep this in mind, doesn't factor in deaths caused by the Israeli siege due to starvation, disease, the destruction of Gaza's healthcare infrastructure, and other factors, figures that could take years to determine. Now, when it comes to the missing Palestinians, right now, of the missing Palestinians that we know of, there are about 10,000, and they are presumed to be dead, buried under the rubble. On Saturday, 116 bodies were recovered, and on Sunday, 117 bodies were recovered. But the recovery process is taking a long time, partly because they don't have the heavy machinery necessary to help them dig under the rubble. So they're hoping that Israel will allow that type of machinery to come in to assist with the recovery efforts. It remains to be seen whether Israel will allow that to happen. For now, they're using pickaxes and their bare hands in order to dig and try to find the remains of family members under the rubble. Now, on top of that, the debris is full of unexploded bombs and ordnances. So today there was a story about Palestinian children getting injured as a result of one of those unexploded bombs going off. Khalid al-Ayubi, who is a civil defense chief for northern Gaza, told The Guardian that at first we are focusing on collecting the corpses lying in the streets to preserve what remains of them, especially with the presence of stray dogs that have been attacking the bodies. Dr. Mohammed al-Mugir, who is the director of the Humanitarian Support and International Cooperation at the Gaza Civil Defense Agency, says that if Israel allows for the heavy equipment to enter the strip, recovering all missing 10,000 bodies that we know of will take 6 months.
Yeah, all right, so at least 10,000.
If Russia did this, let's just talk about that. Let's talk about if Russia did this. Wall-to-wall coverage.
Well,
we might drop a nuke on Russia if they did this.
Yeah, and so, by the way, Israel has killed far more journalists, far more human rights workers, far more civilians than Russia has in Ukraine, and in a much, much smaller area, right? So now, it's interesting that you say that, Anna, because the first thing I was gonna ask you guys to do is imagine if the roles were reversed. That the Palestinians had killed so many Israelis that the Israelis were worried that the dogs were gonna eat the dead bodies in the streets. And the Palestinians wouldn't let the Israelis have food or aid or any equipment to dig out their dead. And the Israelis had to remove the rubble by hand to recover their dead Jewish relatives, okay? There would be what? It'd be nonstop talk, right? Wall-to-wall coverage forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. There would be movie after movie after movie after movie about never again, never again, never again. And there should be, because that's horrific. What's happened to Gaza is horrific, and if it happened to Israelis, it would be equally horrific. And there should be movie after movie. But it happens to the Palestinians. American media barely cares. The 20 Israelis have returned. The 20 actual human beings. Okay, well, on the last day, how many people were killed? 91 about?
Yeah.
So 91 Palestinians killed on the last day of bombing, even after Trump said to stop bombing?
According to ABC News.
According to ABC News. 91 higher than 20, right? But that was just an average day. Who cares? They're just Palestinians. They're subhuman. Murder, 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 murder all of them you want. And the dogs are eating them in the streets. Who cares? Because American media got you to believe that Palestinians are the terrorists. And they're the savages, and they're the terrible people, and they're the violent people. So any violence Israel does to them, they had it coming. It was their fault.
By the way, now that the ceasefire is in effect, Israel says, we're not going to engage in any offensive military operations, only defensive. And so they bombed a school for blind children in Gaza.
Of course they did, because they're sick terrorists. And is that going to lead to news today on cable news?
The only reason why I know about it is because independent news covered it.
Of course, so they're going to bury it.
Yeah.
Because they don't do the news. They do propaganda for all the donors, including Israel. So it's inconvenient for the donors that Israel happens to be run by a bunch of sick terrorists. And they're mauling and massacring people and blind children and letting Palestinians be eaten in the streets by dogs. But they're only Palestinians. So the beloved Israelis must never be criticized, okay? I'm going to ignore that for here to eternity. I don't care what names you call us. So they say, oh my God, of the hostages that were deceased, 4 were returned, but there's another 24, and they're having trouble finding the bodies. Well, they're having trouble finding 10 to 40,000 Palestinian bodies. But I know they're just subhuman Palestinians. So that 40,000 is irrelevant. The only people that matters, the Israelis. Where are the Israelis? Where are the humans? Where are the humans? Okay, so look at this. 24 we're worried about, and of course I want them returned. On the first day, 116 bodies were recovered, Palestinian bodies, I'm sorry, only Palestinians though. And then on the second day, on Sunday, 117 were recovered. But tens of thousands more to go. But American media and American politicians couldn't care less about them. But the beloved, most important, superior Israelis, 20 of them have been returned, but there's still some dead ones there. Even a dead Israeli is worth 10,000 alive Palestinians, according to our sick, disgusting mainstream media.
All right, let's take a break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about the fragility of this ceasefire and the likelihood or lack of likelihood that it's going to hold. We'll talk about some of the statements coming from specific members of the Israeli government and more. Don't miss it.
All right, let's go to Super Chat. Scandinavian Alien Dragon says, what is a terrorist? Someone who threatens their prisoners as they are released, someone who kills people in charge of a peace treaty, or those who attack countries surrounding them? No, Muslims are, WTF. I mean, that's in there, of course, pointing out the American media standards. That's right. Israel can do 2,000 things that are the exact definition of terrorism. And if you say that, they'll say, well, though that is empirically true, you're an anti-Semite and should never work in American media again. By the way, Israel isn't controlling us, but no one who criticizes Israel should ever be allowed to work in American media. How can both of those things be true at the same time? No, not because you criticize Israel. But the way you criticize Israel bordered on a trope. Yeah, anti-Semite, fire them. Don't ever allow them on television. Everyone must agree that Israel is the greatest moral army. No, you propagandist pricks. Gabe's World writes in, I'm right/independent and agree 100%. Love you, Cenk and Anna. Keep up the good work. Thank you. All decent people agree. Anthony Aguilar says, never apologize for being honest and telling the truth. The harder right over the easier wrong. Until Israel bans you from Israel, you haven't pushed hard enough yet. If you are thinking, wait, Anthony Aguilar, that sounds familiar. That's Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar. He was supposed to be on the show on Friday. He'll come back on. We had a technical issue, but I just found out today that Israel has banned him. They're like, you dared to tell the truth about how we were murdering the Palestinians? You're banned from Israel. Hey, Lieutenant Colonel, where do I get that privilege?
Seriously.
I'm super jealous. I can't, IDF wrote my name on a bomb that they used to murder Palestinians, but I haven't been banned from Israel yet. Oh, I know why, they want me to come. So just like the Congress people, right? Oh yeah, come to Israel. Yeah, we'll go rifle through your bags and we'll spy on you and we'll try to get blackmail on you. Yeah, come to Israel. If you're an American congressman going to Israel and you think they're not gonna spy on you, you're really the dumbest person on the planet. Okay, I hope they catch you doing something so stupid because you're so dumb. And I guarantee you, when you're in Israel, you'll get nothing but honeypots all over you, right? And those idiotic US congressmen who work for Israel, but oh, I bet they like me, like a 380-pound grotesque human being. Like, oh yeah, they really don't. No, they have me on tape. I'll do anything you want. All right, Disco Stew. I know it's not much, but after seeing that Palestinian man, it's more important than ever that you folks keep up this coverage. Thank you, brother. R. Rodizio writes in the YouTube member section, I'm sickened by mainstream TV. They all day shows the Israeli celebration and return of the hostages. Only brief mention of Palestinian hostages and no comment on what they're returning to. Of course not. They're sick, disgusting propagandists. Dev0094 writes in on Twitch, I'm done with their anti-Semitism label. I'm convinced it exists to excommunicate people from conversations.
It's to discredit people who are telling the truth. That's what it is. It's to discredit people who are telling the truth about what Israel really is. No, honestly, I didn't know evil like this existed. So I didn't.
Yeah, so look, anti-Semitism used to be a real thing, but now it's lost all of its meaning. It's used 98% of the time to describe perfectly moral people who are opposed to Israel's war crimes. Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Look, all of you have wonderful comments here. I'll read one here. Votostar on TYT.com, a member said, I used to believe in a two-state solution, but now I think we need to replace Israel with a democratic state, including former Israelis and Palestinians as voting citizens. Foreigners with dual citizenship should be excluded. So look, there's nothing wrong with that idea. I'd love to have a democracy there where Palestinians and Israelis live peacefully together, but there is less than a 0% chance that Israel will allow that. Israel despises the idea of democracy.
Who would trust the Israelis under any circumstance at this point? No, Palestinians deserve their own state, free of Israeli meddling, free of their disgusting, loathsome war crimes and behavior. No, I want them to be free of the Israelis, okay?
Yeah, so I agree with you, but my point is that Israel would never allow a democracy where they're outvoted because the whole point of the country is exclusionary. No, it is not a Muslim state. It's not a Christian state. It's not a democracy. Yeah. Stop calling it a democracy. Yeah. It can't be a Jewish state and a democracy.
That's what Ben Gvir said, actually.
It just can't.
Ben Gvir has said that on the record.
By the way, that is logically impossible. Yet every moron in American media will say not only is it possible, if you don't declare it the greatest democracy in the Middle East, you're an anti-Semite. No, okay, I'm done with them. I'm done with them. You go take your love for Israeli terrorists and shove it up your ass. I'm not interested in it, and you call me any name you like, and I guarantee you I'll call you 10,000 times worse. Okay, and then we'll have a fight over who's a bigger jerk. And my guess is I will win in getting you guys to be recognized as the sick, disgusting Israeli propagandist you are, I'm already winning online. That's what's driving them crazy. Not me, but our entire movement of actually showing the truth instead of nothing but wall-to-wall Israeli propaganda. So go ahead, mainstream media, kiss some more Israeli ass, some more terrorist ass, and see how it turns out for you. And then you get the polls, oh, we're down to 7% in credibility. Gee, I wonder why. Because you're not doing the news. We can all see you now. You're doing propaganda. So you call us any names you like, we'll call you any names we like, and see how it turns out for you. Michelle, thank you for signing up on TYT.com. Anna.
All right, let's get to our next story.
I kept my promise and officially recognized the capital of Israel and moved the American embassy to Jerusalem. Isn't that right, Miriam? Look at Miriam, she's back there. Stand up, Miriam, stand up. Miriam and Sheldon would come into the office, they'd call me. He'd call me. I think they had more trips to the White House than anybody else I could think of. Look at her sitting there so innocently. She's got 60 billion in the bank, 60 billion. She loves this country. Her and her husband are so incredible. We miss him so dearly. But I actually asked her, I'm going to get her in trouble with this, but I actually asked her once, I said, so Miriam, I know you love Israel. What do you love more, the United States or Israel? She refused to answer. That might mean Israel, I must say.
In that case, her citizenship should be revoked and she should be deported to Israel where she belongs. Now, President Donald Trump thanked his masters while visiting Israel today, Miriam Adelson being one of them. For those wondering who she is the woman who bribed him with $100 million in the last election cycle in order to essentially get the president to allow Israel to annex the West Bank, which they're currently in the process of doing. At least Trump understands how things work in the American political system. He knows where the bread gets buttered. And in fact, he knew all the way dating back to October of 2015 when he tweeted this. Sheldon Adelson, Miriam Adelson's husband, is looking to give big dollars to Marco Rubio because he feels he can mold Rubio into his perfect little puppet. I agree. Well, today, that puppet is President Donald Trump. Cenk, over to you.
So Sheldon and Miriam Adelson over 3 election cycles have given Donald Trump more than $337 million in legalized bribes. So the Supreme Court says, no, they're just campaign contributions and independent expenditures. By the way, that does not include dark money. That just includes the money we know of. That is a massive amount of money. Everyone that has 2 brain cells to rub together says, well, that's obviously bribery. Miriam Adelson and Sheldon giving money to Trump, and then Trump does whatever they want. In fact, Trump brags about doing whatever they want. That is not the first time that he has mentioned that he moved the embassy on behalf of the Adelsons. He has said it publicly before, because one of the reasons they gave him that bribe, there were many reasons, I actually outlined it in my book, Justice is Coming. It is incredibly well sourced and has been checked over and over again. So one of the reasons was they wanted him to move the embassy. And now in the last election cycle, by the way, one of the demands that Miriam had was also to allow America to let Israel annex the West Bank. There is no Hamas in the West Bank, but it has nothing to do with Hamas. It has nothing to do with self-defense. Miriam Adelson and Sheldon Adelson are Zionist zealots who believe in greater Israel. So their mission is to have America finance the theft of Palestinian land, and of course the genocide and ethnic cleansing that comes along with it. And now Trump is bragging about it. And in some of those pictures that were next to me, you just saw Trump putting a medal on her. What is that about? Well, after Sheldon, her late husband, gave $200 million in the last 2 cycles, 2020 and 2020. I'm sorry, 2016 and 2020. He gave Miriam Adelson a Presidential Medal of Freedom.
She looks like a villain. It's amazing.
So look, Presidential Medal of Freedom used to be the highest honor in America. Now it's a tchotchke you throw in if you get enough, and you get these Ginsu knives. You get the West Bank. You get to slaughter everybody in the Gaza Strip. You get to steal all their lands and set up greater Israel. And if you act now, and give me $337 million, I'll throw Kinsu knives and a Presidential Medal of Freedom in for you. And then I'll say it publicly in front of everyone. Oh, by the way, there's Miriam, the person who betrayed America and couldn't answer the simplest question. What are you more loyal to, America or Israel? That's the easiest question in the world. America is the correct answer because we came here to be Americans. But she couldn't answer that question. Why? Because everybody knows. You come here, you become a citizen here. She's also an Israeli citizen. You can become a citizen here so you could funnel Israeli money into American politicians legally. And then when people tell you, hey, it looks like your PAC says it's done on behalf of Israel, a foreign government, you go, how dare you? That is anti-Semitic dual loyalty trope. How dare you? These are just
trope. It's literally true. It is literally true. She's a good little foot soldier for a foreign government. And clearly, as Trump admitted in front of everyone today, she loves Israel more than the United States. So why are you here? Other than to facilitate
to bribe our
the
politicians.
Transfer, of money in the form of bribes from a foreign government to our politicians, and then the transfer of US taxpayer money from our country to Israel so they can commit their atrocities and engage in empire building. Anyway, so that's what's going on. It's just so utterly loathsome and disgusting, but that is what we're dealing with here. The fact that he talked about that as if it's something to joke about, something to laugh about, something to have a good time about. These people are traitors to the country, okay? They are.
So look, guys, the Supreme Court legalized those bribes, but they're still bribes. It's not like Miriam Adelson and Sheldon gave him $337 million so that he could do good in the world or cure cancer or some other reason. No, they very explicitly gave it to him to help a foreign government.
Steal land.
And Trump says it all the time. So every person with common sense, 99% of us see, yes, this is obviously on behalf of Israel. Then Trump says, yes, I took the donor money and then I sold American foreign policy to that donor. He says it right in front of everyone. The only people left not acknowledging it are the reporters in mainstream media. Even though Trump says it himself. Trump says it himself and they're like, nope, 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 nope. Let's hide the donor class. Let's hide the Israeli supporters here in America. And if anybody criticizes them, anti-Semite, ruin their lives. So what are you guys? You're not news, you're Israeli, you're pathetic Israeli propagandists. Everyone in mainstream media. Go ahead, Anna.
Well, let's talk a little bit about this ceasefire and whether or not it's gonna hold, something that we're hoping for, but be cautiously optimistic. So let's get into the details. President Donald Trump absolutely swears that the war between Hamas and Israel is over. According to Ryan Grimm, aboard Air Force One, Trump was asked about Netanyahu's refusal to say that the war is over, which is, by the way, a huge red flag. Trump responded with, the war is over, the war is over, the war is over, okay? Do you understand that? But while everyone seems to be celebrating the end of the war, in my opinion, prematurely today, the ceasefire in Gaza remains in a fragile state with tripwires and questionable statements coming from members of Israel's government. Why don't we start with Benjamin Netanyahu, who said that the military campaign isn't over yet. And for those listening to the audio version, when we come back from the video, I'll read you his quote.
ואני רוצה להגיד לכם, בכל מקום שנלחמנו, ניצחנו. אבל באותה מידה, אני חייב להגיד לכם, המערכה לא תמה. יש עדיין אתגרים ביטחוניים גדולים מאוד לפנינו. חלק מאויבינו מנסים להשתקם כדי לתקוף אותנו שוב. וכמו שאומרים אצלנו, אנחנו על זה. יש גם הזדמנויות גדולות שלא ידענו כמותן, דווקא בגלל הניצחונות שהבאנו. אני משוכנע שבכוחות משותפים אנחנו נתגבר על האתגרים ונממש את ההזדמנויות.
So again, for those listening to the audio version of the show, he says that the campaign is not over. There are still very big security challenges ahead of us. Some of our enemies are trying to recover in order to attack us again. And as they say here, we are on it. So let me just note that he's not being specific about which enemies he's referring to. So is it war with Lebanon? Is it continuing the military operations in the Gaza Strip? Is it potential war with Iran, which, by the way, has been ramping up in regard to some of the rhetoric we've been hearing in the Israeli government and even among some US officials? We don't know for sure, but the other statements coming from members of the Knesset certainly caused some concern. So in addition to that, according to the Times of Israel to shift focus to raising Gaza tunnels, Katz says. And the person they're referring to, of course, is Israel Katz, is the Israeli defense minister. Here's what he had to say. The major challenge for Israel after the phase of returning the hostages will be the destruction of all of Hamas's terror tunnels in Gaza directly by the IDF and through the international mechanism to be established under US leadership and supervision. They were in Gaza for 2 years straight. They've razed Gaza, they've leveled the Gaza Strip. Over 93% of the residential structures have been completely destroyed in the Gaza Strip. We're talking about literally millions of people who are left homeless with absolutely no infrastructure whatsoever. No water, no roads, nothing. No schools, hospitals have been destroyed. You want to go back in to deal with the tunnels. You couldn't deal with the tunnels first? That couldn't be it's BS. They're gonna go back in, they're looking for the excuse, that's what this is. He also says, this is the primary meaning of implementing the agreed principle of demilitarizing Gaza, not Hamas, demilitarizing Gaza and disarming Hamas, Katz says, adding that he instructed the IDF to prepare to carry out the mission. So demilitarizing any country means that it's not a country. They have no means to defend themselves. And considering the fact that the Palestinian people would be living next door to Israel, a country that wants to steal their land and has treated them like absolute animals, I would venture to say that they would want some sort of military, some sort of means to defend themselves. But of course, Israel doesn't want that. And the real question is, why? Why don't they want that?
Yeah. So they claim, of course, oh, we're not safe, we're not safe. We're not safe until everyone around us is dead or totally subjugated. No weapons, no food, no aid, just groveling on the ground to us. And then we'll feel deeply superior to them and we'll feel great about it. If you say, oh, Jen, come on, that seems like, are we still talking about exaggeration? Are we after they murdered over 67,000 people, over 20,000 kids? So on their way out, they lit a bunch of fires, talked about the sewage plant earlier in the show. They also did a whole bunch of homes. They burned the food on their way out, the IDF did. And then they would make videos, IDF soldiers laughing, or ha ha ha, we burned it to the ground. I mean, they look exactly like the Nazis. Ha 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 ha, we killed you, and then we burned it down, and we turned it into a cesspool, ha 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 ha. I always wondered, how the hell did the Germans turn into Nazis? Well, apparently this is how. Because they're taught in their heads, and there's massive propaganda inside Israel. The Palestinians are the dirtiest terrorists. They're savage. Muslims are the worst. You should hate all the Muslims. They're coming to kill you. They're gonna kill all of you. You have to kill them first. Kill them first. They teach their children. Everything that they accuse the Palestinians of is projection. It's a confession by the Israelis. They teach their children to despise the Palestinians, Arabs and Muslims. They teach them that they're all terrorists. They teach them that they're subhuman and that the Israelis are, oh, we're all gonna die. You're the one that doesn't let them exist. Stop with the lie about, oh, Israel might not exist. They have nuclear weapons, Iron Dome, etc. They exist, they will exist to eternity. Palestine doesn't exist. You goddamn liars. Palestine doesn't exist. That is the problem. But you see Netanyahu, never listen to Netanyahu when he's speaking English. Only listen to him when he's speaking in Hebrew.
Yep.
So when he's doing English, that's propaganda. That's not for his home audience. That's for the idiots in American media. Hey, dogs, come here, doggy. Oh, Israel is moral and wonderful, and the Palestinians are dirty savages. Oh, they're dirty savages. Netanyahu said it, we have to write it down. And then he goes in Hebrew and he goes, the campaign's not over, I'm not doing this peace deal, you crazy? No, he said it was a great opportunity to do more. You saw it in Hebrew, great opportunity, guys. The campaign's not over. And what are they gonna do? They're gonna pretend the Palestinians made them stay and made them kill them more. Oh, the tunnels. Anna's right. Okay, you want to get rid of the tunnels? I get it. You had 2 years. Why didn't you get rid of the tunnels?
Too busy leveling the whole Gaza Strip.
Why did you destroy the hospitals, the schools that had no one in them, universities, the entire universities leveled? Why did you bother destroying empty university buildings, but didn't destroy the tunnels? It's almost like you want them as an excuse while you're in the middle of committing a genocide so you could steal that land, exactly as we said. The tunnels are the only thing you didn't destroy? Oh, come on. Who would be stupid enough to believe that? Oh, right, literally every single person in mainstream media. They had to go back in for the tunnels. Okay, and of course they're gonna say, here, I'll tell you ahead of time, so that way you know it's Israeli propaganda, because it's predictable. They will say, Hamas did not surrender enough, they did not disarm enough, there's still tunnels, we had no choice. We didn't break the ceasefire, they broke the ceasefire by not submitting to us and groveling to us enough. And since we did not get the abject humiliation and the entire genocide that we ordered, we're gonna have to keep going. Hey, dogs in American media, say Hamas did it. Say the Palestinians are guilty and we have to murder them. And they will all go, they had to murder them. Of course, everyone's an anti-Semite who disagrees. And of course, we all bow our heads to Israel, but they don't control anything, anti-Semite.
And I appreciate the honesty of Bezalel Smotrich, as always. He just says what he actually thinks and what they plan to do out loud with really no shame. So he says that he clearly doesn't want to stop terrorizing the Palestinians. He says, quote, a tremendous responsibility to ensure that this is not, God forbid, a deal of hostages in exchange for stopping the war, as Hamas thinks and boasts.
See?
Immediately after the hostages return home, he's saying it out loud, everyone. This isn't me, this is Bezalel Smotrich, Israeli finance minister. Immediately after the hostages return home, the state of Israel will continue to strive with all its might for the true eradication of Hamas and the genuine disarmament of Gaza so that it no longer poses a threat to Israel. They're gonna go right back in.
Yeah,
they're telling you, so believe them.
They already have 53% of Gaza. They're not gonna leave. They're supposed to withdraw to a security perimeter. They're not withdrawing to a security perimeter. They're gonna go further into Gaza because this is about greater Israel. Look, Smotrich has said it 1,000 times. Ben Gvir has said it. Netanyahu has said it. Netanyahu has said that Israel's gonna take the land from the river to the sea. The thing that American media told us was like the most horrible thing that anyone could ever say. And in the case of the Palestinians, they say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. They're like, how dare you anti-Semites wanting freedom? Don't you know you're dogs of ours? You're not allowed to have freedom. That is a genocidal comment. Netanyahu says that American media goes, no, shh. Everybody cover it up. Netanyahu says the campaign's not over. How much, are they reporting it on cable news? Are they reporting it on cable news? None, zero, right? And then now on this, so.
One more thing, Cenk, real quick.
Okay.
So Ynet News, which is an Israeli publication, reported the following. I'm gonna read from them verbatim. The IDF has begun constructing new defensive positions closer to the border, pulling back from areas deeper in Gaza as part of the ceasefire and initial hostage release agreement. These positions are expected to become semi-permanent outposts, similar to previous forward bases built along the buffer zone near the border fence. If you want to know what Israel really intends on doing, do not consume American media on this topic. Head on over to Israeli press because they'll tell you the truth. They say it out loud.
Yeah, no, I'll give credit. We give credit where credit is due. The Israeli press has been terrific in a lot of instances, 1,000 times better than American press, because Israeli press doesn't have to worry about being called anti-Semites. So they can just report things, right? So a lot of them are right-wing propagandists for Netanyahu, et cetera, but there's a lot of really good journalists in Israel. And by the way, you have to get all of our news from the Israeli press, like Smotrich talking about how, yeah, we're not leaving. No, we're gonna continue the genocide, right? Now, did you see that on cable news? Of course you won't see it on American mainstream media, because American mainstream media is completely controlled by the Israeli government. And so if they're not, why don't you report the obvious things we're reporting? We're not making it, you could double check our quotes, quadruple check the quotes. Make sure you're getting the quotes exactly right, okay? But you won't. No one on television will talk about any of the things that we mentioned here because they work for the Israeli government. And why do they mainly work for the Israeli government? Because everybody knows that if you're in mainstream media and you say anything critical of Israel, even if it's 200% verified, you'll be called an anti-Semite, your life will be ruined, your career will end, and they'll smear you to no end. They all know it. They're all scared to death of criticizing Israel. And so they're not remotely journalists. And so they do work as a marketing department, whereas the Israeli press actually gets us news from time to time.
Well, when we come back from the break, I gotta ask it one more time. Is Marjorie Taylor Greene mommy? Just ask yourself. We'll be right back.
Damn it, they failed us. And if you're not angry about that, Michael, and any of you out there, then you're damn wrong, because you should be angry. Young Turks.
It was genuine. He was mad. Cenk Uygur, known online as one of the Young Turks, isn't afraid to throw some punches.
3, 2, 1, fade up.
Cenk the Turk Uygur.
What kind of TV station is this? The whole point is for me to yell and scream and tell you what I think.
It was right out of like Wayne's World.
This guy on this little rinky-dink website is speaking truth to power.
We've been averaging 600,000 views a day, beating most of the cable shows in America.
We're the largest online news show in the world.
We're celebrating our 1 billionth view.
Television, we're coming.
More politics ahead with Cenk Uygur.
He knew that the MSNBC opportunity was an experiment.
And fill and host beat CNN and headline news combined. At some point, they want to give me a show.
Every single year, that comes out of our paycheck. We put it in, and you're saying we were suckers.
When you, as a host, tells someone you're interviewing to shut up, that's going to raise a red flag.
That guy needed a tall glass of shut up juice.
If President Obama's doing the wrong thing, I'm not going to tell you that he's doing the right thing so I can, quote, support him.
He says to me, "You won't believe the meeting that I just had."
The head of MSNBC talked to me.
And they want him off the air. Cenk took an incredible risk.
We're supposed to challenge the government. That's the role of the media. The Democrats and the Republicans are here to screw you. And who on the air is saying it?
I wouldn't have done what he did.
That if I'm going to be a talk show host, I should be the biggest talk show host in the country. I don't think anyone else does it better. I don't think anyone's even close.
Before you know it, I'll be back on your TV doing a national show. I guarantee it.
Magic. It's showtime. And say 45 minutes. I'm hosting today. Now, I know what you're thinking, Jerry, your face is already perfect, but you know what? I still need to apply some makeup. I went through this process, right, a few years ago, when I realized that I was gonna have to wear makeup on the show. I had to go through like finding out what my undertones were. You guys know what those are? I got my MAC Cosmetics. It says SPF 15 foundation, broad spectrum. But apparently what I have is red undertones, and I think pores are not supposed to be seen. I need all these things to be confirmed for me. These sponge things don't work for me. You gotta use your hands. This idea. That's how the magic really happens. So we're gonna go through a tutorial how to make the magic happen from beautiful to beautifuler. Let's go. I've already been moisturized. That's the first thing. But moisturization already happened. We go raw. All hands. Pick up. Couple streaks. This is the guy way of putting on makeup. We got dots. There's some shiny points that generally happen. First of all, here we go. You dust here. I'm putting way too much, but you dust. Oh, get the excess off. You don't want chunky powder. There's like a T-zone, I think, right? Mine is a double T-zone. Because I went middle and another cross. Make sure your nose isn't all shiny. People get on you for it. They'll say, that's not a good point you made on there, JR. Your nose is shiny. You guys are picky like that sometimes. I think that's about it, fellas and ladies. See you guys next time. Bitsies.
This earth warming and carbon is actually healthy for us.
right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys, and Titan. Titan, thanks for sending in the 5 Young Turks memberships on YouTube. Appreciate it, brother. All right, Casper.
We've got Marge, and she's in charge. Let's get to it.
As a conservative and as a business owner in the construction industry and as a realist, I can say we have to do something about labor, and that needs to be a smarter plan than just rounding up every single person and deporting them just like that.
I really thought they were just going to go after the criminals. I really thought there was enough gang members and enough people, MS-13 members and whatever they were looking for, that they're wanted. They would go after those guys.
In recent days, both Joe Rogan and, yes, even Marjorie Taylor Greene have spoken out against President Donald Trump's deportation policies. And there's a lot more of that where it came from. So let's watch a little more from Rogan and Greene, essentially hitting Trump on the topic of immigration.
I'm going to speak from very real experience. We have a labor force in America across many industries that has been built on illegal labor. That's a fact. That also cannot be ignored. Right. And I'll say it like this: the same way I look at the health insurance industry and I'm analyzing, we need to build an off-ramp. But an off-ramp is gradual, right? Off of the Affordable Care Act, off of Obamacare into some sort of new system that is much better. I also look at this problem that we have with illegal immigration, that we can build an off-ramp there.
This is crazy to ask lower income and middle income people who are, kind of getting by, and then all of a sudden, you're about to ship them to a country where they've never been. They haven't been since they were 4.
Yeah.
And you're gonna pull up their family and and they've been in the community like that. That shows no heart. And that's the problem. Like, you're not gonna get any reasonable people to want to go along with that. Any kind person would look at that and go, this can't be the only way to do this.
Damn right.
Now look, Joe Rogan has a history of defending immigrants, even undocumented immigrants in the United States. He did it during Trump's first term. So to be honest with you, I'm not surprised that it doesn't favor Trump's mass deportation policies. Marjorie Taylor Greene, though, that's a completely different story. And she kind of started off in questioning the US alliance with Israel. That then turned into questioning the way our elections are funded and the influence of foreign governments on our politicians. That later evolved into questioning our healthcare system and her own party when it comes to not wanting to provide extended subsidies for the Affordable Care Act, which of course is important to extend, otherwise premiums will double. And now she's questioning Trump's deportation policies. And I'm so here for it. It's so refreshing because you better believe she's getting backlash from her own party. But when that happens, I think it's important for people who are critical of what the Republican Party has been up to provide Marjorie Taylor Greene with positive reinforcement when she arrives at the right conclusions at things.
Yeah. Yes, so I'm gonna pull a Trump here. I know I'm not supposed to say it, but yeah, we told you that they would not agree with Trump 100%. We told you that, but everybody said, no, Rogan he's just gonna be a lapdog for Trump. Here he is challenging him on undocumented immigrants at the very, very core of MAGA, okay? And saying, no, this isn't what we bargained for. Now, everybody is challenging them on Israel, as we told you a year ago. Why did we think that? Because we listened to them. We try really hard to do news. So, like, sometimes they say things we hate, and then I get mad about it, and I come and tell you. And then sometimes they say things that we agree with that we're surprised by. We also come and tell you that, right? Mm-hmm. When we tell them the things that we don't like, some people on the left go, yeah. When we tell you, no, good news, guys, they actually might agree with us on Israel or even on undocumented immigrants. Boo, don't say that. Well, guys, there's no, okay, now put us aside, right? That's a really good thing because you need non-leftists, you need a coalition, you need independents most of all, and you need some portion of the Trump voters that flipped over to Trump to flip back And so when the Rogans of the world and the Tim Dillons of the world go, even on immigration, no, he's going too far. That's a giant win. Please take the win. Now, hold on 1 second, Anna. So those are the podcasters that were easier to predict. That's why some of us realized that ahead of time. It didn't take rocket scientists, you just had to listen to them. Marjorie Taylor Greene, I'm shocked by. I'm not shocked that she has swung on Israel because that's already kind of an America First issue. Nobody saw it coming, but still, if you know Marjorie Taylor Greene, that's not overly shocking, right? But on immigration, I didn't see that coming. That is an unbelievable development and an amazing development because now, this is the heart of what we've been trying to tell you guys. They're now, some of them have become untethered to the money. The independent podcasters don't work for a giant media corporation. They don't need their corporate boss to tell them what to think. They're thinking on their own, good and bad. But that's much better than just bad, an assembly line of bad propaganda, right? And very few politicians, already you had just Democrats, Ro Khanna and the rest on the left, but now all of a sudden, you have Tom Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene turning down some to all PAC money, right? They don't take $1 of AIPAC money. All of a sudden they're like, yeah, wait a minute, we should be America first. The minute you become unchained from the PAC money is the minute that agreement and reasonableness begin to emerge.
I see things a little bit differently from you, but not by much. So you're still kind of thinking about this in a left versus right paradigm. And I don't think that paradigm makes any sense anymore. Because a lot of people who voted for Trump voted for him based on the economic populism that he was campaigning on, that he actually has not delivered on, and in my opinion is not gonna deliver on. Those folks are individuals who might identify as Republican, but they are upset at the current economic situation on the ground in America. And that's something that the left traditionally has been wanting to do something about. Better working conditions, better pay, do something about the insanely high interest rates on credit cards, do something about the fact that airline companies screw you over and intentionally overbook flights, and then if you're a little bit late to getting to the gate and someone else took your seat, it's over and they're not gonna give you a refund. Those are the kinds of things that I feel that voters, ordinary Americans, rank and file Democrats and Republicans and independents can actually work together on to accomplish policy. If you're still operating under this, blue versus red, left versus right, conservative versus liberal paradigm, we're not gonna get anything accomplished.
And I'm like Marjorie Taylor Greene said, funny enough, we're building an off-ramp to the left-right paradigm.
Yeah.
You have to remember 98% of the country, unfortunately, I mean, if we're super lucky, we're down to 80% because of the internet, right? But somewhere in that range, a huge number still believed in only left-right. And they were trained by mainstream media to hate one another.
Exactly.
And to have what I call binary brain. So if Marjorie Taylor Greene is on the right and she says we should have lower drug prices, you should hate her anyway because she's on the wrong side, and your brain cannot comprehend issues or policies or nuance. You can only comprehend left, right, Democrat, Republican, right? That's what mainstream media has trained all of us to. So we need to start getting on that off-ramp to that binary brain. I don't care what their team color is, as long as they're against war, against corruption, for lower drug prices, et cetera. But they have to actually mean it, and it's our job to hold them accountable.
Now let's reset for something else that Marjorie Taylor Greene spoke about, because I think this is super interesting. So, during a recent appearance on Tim Dillon's podcast, Marjorie Taylor Greene weighed in on the economic conditions on the ground here in the United States. And I thought what she had to say was both accurate, fascinating, and important. Take a look.
When Republicans, and I'm criticizing also Congress big time. I'm really grateful to a lot of the things the president is doing, but I'm really upset with the direction Congress is going. But when we are not doing anything to address the cost of living, we aren't doing anything about Blackstone buying up houses where most young people can't find a house and they're having to compete in bidding wars.
Right.
And we're not doing anything about health insurance premiums. Then for the love of God, what are we doing? The prices have not come down at all.
the job market is weakening.
Job market is still extremely difficult.
Right.
Wages have not gone up. Health insurance premiums are going to go up. Car insurance goes up every year. People's homeowners insurance goes up. Rent is going up. Young people have no hope of buying a home.
Did she just talk about private equity?
Yeah,
she just
did.
talked about private equity.
Yeah.
Everyone, I haven't heard a politician seriously talk about the need to do something about private equity buying up real estate, residential real estate. And I don't even remember the last time.
Yeah.
They don't care.
So guys, agreement has begun to break out now that the PACs are weakened. The super PACs are the death of democracy along with mainstream media. So now that she's starting to be off of the PAC money, she's saying, by the way, amazingly, what Charlie Kirk said to us at the DNC and RNC.
That was the last time someone on the right seriously brought up that issue.
Yeah, and that's when you and I were like shocked when he said that.
Yeah.
And it got us to open up to, hey, let's have a conversation here.
Totally.
Right?
Yes.
Because look, guys, if I've been following politics for over 30 years now, and my whole life, there's only been a couple of people like Bernie Sanders and others, a couple other stragglers who are against corporate rule and didn't take PAC money and were honest. And you could agree or disagree with the solution that they proposed, but they were at least honest, right? Everyone else, both in politics and media, worked for corporate rule. So when the issue of private equity, like Blackstone buying up all of our residential real estate came up, they would all be an assembly line of robots. No, the bankers are doing financial innovation. It is important for them to have creative, innovative policies. The bankers are the greatest bankers. And you never get any real conversation with a human being about, wait a minute, but the prices are going up. This is simple supply and demand. There's more demand because private equity is buying up all these houses. And it makes sense because that's how we create assets for the middle class in America. It's the greatest wealth creation asset we have in America. And so Wall Street is logically trying to gobble that up. Like, this is a real conversation, a human conversation. You never had human conversations before in politics and media. It was just a bunch of robots. So now Marjorie Taylor Greene is a real person. And like a real person, she has a lot of flaws like I do. We make a lot of mistakes, we have failures, we have disagreements, right? But at least she's not a robot.
She's not. And by the way, you're saying she's not a robot because she's one of the very few in Congress who has rejected corporate PAC money.
And all of a sudden, look at what she's saying.
Yes, and in the same interview with Tim Dillon, she actually did criticize Trump on the topic of money in politics. Let's take a look.
I know people that literally, some of my own personal family members, some of my own personal friends, they're getting by month to month, charging up their credit cards. Literally, that's how they're getting by, charging up their credit cards. And no, all I've seen is a revolving door of foreign leaders in the White House. Have regular people's bank accounts been affected? Has the stress come off? No, that has not happened yet. And that needs to be the major focus. It shouldn't be about helping your crypto donors or your AI donors or welcoming in these people that hated you and spent money to try to beat you, but all of a sudden are excited to come out to the new Rose Garden patio.
Yes.
That shouldn't be the focus. The focus should be the people that showed up at the rallies, stood there for freaking 18 hours trying to get in the rain, in the cold, in the 100-degree heat. For those people, those are the ones that I care about. Those are the ones that voted for not only the president, but every single Republican gave us power. I don't think those people are being served.
She also criticized Trump and his administration for doing a $20 billion bailout of Argentina. What happened? I thought Milei had all these wonderful ideas to help save Argentina's economy.
Why didn't he save them already? Why does he need our money?
Bungling the Epstein files or engaging in the Epstein file cover-up, doing a U-turn on sending arms to Ukraine. Trump is now considering sending Ukraine Tomahawk missiles and in fact will have US soldiers assist Ukraine in attacking Russian territory, their energy infrastructure to be exact. She also criticized the Trump administration for floating a pardon for Diddy, but not for George Santos. I'm not sure I agree with her on that one, but it's okay. And look, I just thought that interview was fascinating. I'm a big fan of Tim Dillon's podcast in general, but I thought listening to her kind of talk about what she's been reconsidering, rethinking, where she lands on these issues was important, and to have an open mind while listening to her, because we have to find common ground with people we have disagreements with. Otherwise, we are not going to be able to accomplish anything policy-wise. And in fact, we really haven't been able to accomplish much policy-wise.
I mean, look, can you find, like, we're supposed to hate Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's supposed to hate us. We're supposed to like Democratic politicians like Andrew Cuomo.
No, thank you.
Andrew Cuomo is the guy who would allow Blackstone. He would give them a red carpet to make sure they could buy up our homes and turn us into renters and take all the wealth creation for themselves, etc. So no, thank you. I'm not interested in corporate politicians, no matter what they call themselves. And now that she's off the PAC money, it's not just real estate, health insurance premiums. She noticed now that wages haven't gone up. How often have you heard us say that on the Young Turks? 1 million times, right? Because why? We're not tethered, we're not chained to the corporate PAC money or to the corporate media, right? Corporate media is never gonna talk about any of these things. They're gonna try to bury it, and they're gonna try to make her look radical and the Bernie and Ro Khanna look radical, and anyone who would serve the American people are all radicals. But the corporate scum like Joe Manchin and Mitch McConnell are moderates. Cinema's a moderate. None of those are moderates. They're radical corporatists who sold all of us out. So look, on the right, they say America first. We could argue about, what to call things. I like Americans first, because I'm not saying vis-a-vis our aid to Africa to fight AIDS. I'm saying vis-a-vis our donor class, foreign governments and corporations. Serve Americans first, not your donors first, not foreign governments first. And so, look, we try to crowdsource the revolution here. I just started it last week. So the regular show, news show, 6 to 8 o'clock Eastern on YouTube and on every other platform, Young Turks. And then at 8 o'clock, we're trying to bring the right and the left together. Guys, this is a beautiful thing that's happening now, where people are beginning to realize, oh, of course, follow the money. Money in politics is the root of all of these problems. Because once you allow politicians to be bought, well, then it's gonna be an open auction. And Blackstone's gonna buy him, Israel's gonna buy him, ExxonMobil's gonna buy him, and they're never gonna serve us. And the giant liars in mainstream media will keep telling you that they're honest politicians, when in reality, they're crooks who work for their donors. And to see Marjorie Taylor Greene liberated from that is a shocking revelation and wonderful surprise that I'm happy to take.
Same. All right, when we come back, we'll talk about Ben Shapiro's thoughts on the so-called conspiratorial right wing and why he feels that they are gaining momentum and popularity on social media. Come right back.
All right, so you got a message for John Idarola?
Tell him to be nice to me.
Okay, that's a tough ask. All right, BG writes in on Super Chat, Adelson bought the Mavs from our friend Mark Cuban, then bribed Texas legislators to bring her Chinese-backed casinos to Dallas-Fort Worth. She's loyal to money. Well, money and Israel. So you know what? I mean, I'm gonna propose this probably in a speech sometime, but you can get started now. At the Mavericks games, every time, like I don't know when, probably I suppose that when the game starts, and certainly if Miriam Adelson's at the game, if they show her on the Jumbotron, everyone should always chant, free, free Palestine, free, free Palestine. If they chant that enough, she might sell the Mavericks. So, and then you'll be rid of her. Stormborn Snuggler writes in a couple times, this administration continues to fail its own citizens, prioritizing foreign interests as domestic issues worsen. We demand accountability, transparency, and impeachment. Journalists has reported that Hamas are now in self-defense mode. Look, I don't know what mode Hamas is in. I know what mode Israel's in, which is keep killing, keep conquering, taking more land. He wrote back in, I'm reading this one blind. History shows us resistance is praised or punished based on politics. So if that is the case, should we have considered Jewish combat organization from the 19s were heroes? When it comes to Hamas, they're Muslims who've lost their entire generation for decades now fighting for survival are terrorists. Look, I use the same standard and it drives the mainstream media crazy. If the French resistance hid in the civilian population, which they most certainly did, and Hamas hides in the civilian population in Gaza, well, they have both done the same thing. So either you're gonna call the French resistance despicable terrorists, how dare they fight back against the Nazis while using human shields, okay? Or you're not, right? But you should have the same standard for both sets of people. But of course, American media will never do that. In fact, before doing that, they've called me an anti-Semite. How dare you show empirical facts that shows that Israeli propaganda is totally and laughably false. Titan says, terrible for Germany to treat people as less than human. It's fine for Israel to treat Palestinians as less than human. I'm sick of knowing my labor supports this. Insane how I had to word this so it would be allowed. Yes, you have to be very, very careful how you criticize the Israelis. On the other hand, you look at my timeline on Twitter and you'll see people calling for my death and saying I'm a Muslim who should be slaughtered and murdered nonstop. No one cares at all. You could threaten to murder Muslims 1 billion times in America and mainstream media wouldn't notice it once, not once. But if you say something slightly mean to a supporter of Israel on a college campus, shut them all down. Oh, I care about bigotry. No, you don't. You're all bigots. None of you care about bigotry at all if you work in mainstream media. So stop lying to yourselves. Just say, okay, I have a paycheck because I serve Israel loyally. So enjoy your nice mansions. John Wick 1 Game writes in, great. She's saying these things, referring to Marjorie Taylor Greene. Let's see what happens when it's time to stand 10 toes down and do something about it. John, believe me, we're gonna be looking and checking. And if she does it, we're gonna give her credit, even if it drives people crazy. If she doesn't do it, we'll definitely let you know. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Jen Hanana. More news.
Well, Ben Shapiro has some thoughts on what some of you may have noticed with some MAGA, supporters on social media. Let's get into the details.
If you go on X, you're going to get a lot more likes and clicks if you are promoting an anti-Israel, anti-Semitic agenda than if you do the opposite. Same thing is true on TikTok. So is it a financial thing? Or? Well, I think some of it's financial. I think some of it is that these people tend to believe in a lot of conspiracy theory about how the world works. And virtually every conspiracy theory at the end of it, unfortunately, is true. Because where all the conspiracy theories go to is, and then who's successful, right? And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on, that was all our problem. Well, right, so they were good. Well, so the height, like we used to, I mean, if you are on the left, then you say there are people in society who have benefited from our systems of power. Who are the people who are well-educated and rich? Disproportionately, a lot of Jews are well-educated and rich, therefore Jews are the bad guy. And you see a sort of horseshoe argument that's happening from the right, where the idea is that, there are a lot of very wealthy, powerful, rich people in American society who are Jewish, and therefore they're in control of all the things I don't like. No, never mind that that's actually not even statistically true.
Yes, people hate Israel because they're jealous of the Jews. It has nothing to do with the fact that Israeli prison guards were caught raping Palestinian detainees who hadn't been committed of any crimes, hadn't been accused of any crimes, hadn't been charged of any crimes. And then when it looked like there might be punishment for them, there were mass protests preventing that punishment because apparently Israeli prison guards raping innocent Palestinians is totally okay. I'm sure that had nothing to do with people, criticizing Israel. And by the way, don't think I miss the obvious conflation of Israel and Jewish people globally, worldwide. The criticism that Ben Shapiro was referring to there, Cenk, is the criticism leveled at Israel, a foreign country with a foreign government in the middle of atrocities and genocide And for the first time in a long time, or maybe ever, you have members of the right wing who are being vocal in their criticism against Israel. And number one, I'm here for it. Number two, it's not a conspiracy theory, okay? The only conspiracy theory here is what you're hearing from Ben Shapiro, who has a difficult time understanding why anyone would be critical of a government and a military that just carried out a genocide in the Gaza Strip and is currently stealing land in the West Bank.
Yeah, so lots to break down already from that. So am I allowed to say the same things he said, or am I not allowed to say? Because he said Jews are disproportionately wealthy and powerful.
No, you're not allowed to say that.
Okay, he's allowed to say it.
Yeah.
But if I say it, I instantly turn it into an anti-Semite, right?
100%.
I'm just trying to clarify the rules.
Yep.
Okay,
Seems
so
like you get them.
or is Ben Shapiro an anti-Semite? No, two different rules. If a Jewish person or an Israeli supporter says it, and someone who isn't says it. Interesting. Okay, so then his conspiracy theory is, our theory is that people are mad at Israel because they committed a genocide in front of the entire world. We all saw it, right?
And keep taking.
So that's our theory. Yeah. And they said you owe us money for a genocide. You owe us money forever. And we've taken 310 billion from America. We want more, and you owe it to us, right? Yep. And we think that that's bothering people. And we think that we know that the Israeli lobby is given to 90% of members of Congress, and that 90% votes with them every single time. So we think that it might be the hundreds of millions of dollars, or the billions of dollars actually, overall, that is influencing their vote. That's our theory. His theory is they don't like rich Jews. Okay, now which one is more likely to be true? But in their mind, for Israeli supporters, they all believe that he's right. They're like, just because Israel's committing a genocide and completely controlling 90% of Congress, people pretend they're being upset. They're just upset because we're better than them. I mean, richer than them.
Yeah. You know, it is kind of amazing, because one thing that I noticed throughout the last 2 years in the various debates that I've engaged in with Israel supporters is their arguments and their rebuttals, if there is a rebuttal as opposed to a personal attack or a tampon being thrown in your direction, is a dog crap. They have no rebuttal. And part of the reason why is because, well, they're delusional. They live in a delusional environment where none of them have ever done anything wrong. The only people who hate them only hate them because they're jealous. So when you live in that type of mindset and you think, well, we're perfect and we've never done anything wrong, well, you're not gonna have a rebuttal when you're confronted with cold, hard facts.
And the second thing that he's saying there, and there's more where that came from that's really interesting, is now he's full on attacking the right wing.
That's exactly right. That's what this is all about.
And he's saying the schmucks who listen to me, they're a bunch of conspiratorial-minded anti-Semites.
Yep.
And he's got more insults where that came from. So then which side are you on? You're certainly not on the left. You're not on the right anymore, and you hate the right because they're all anti-Semites. Oh, let me guess, the only side you're on is Israel's side. Oh, what a coincidence. Wang Jun is one of our members on TYT.com. He wrote in earlier about a different topic we were covering, but it's perfect for this. He said, Adelson is everything they accuse Soros of being. So even if Ben Shapiro were correct, and oh my God, the right wing has all these conspiracies against people who are funding American politicians who happen to be Jewish. Brother, the number one time that happened was George Soros. That was said 1 billion times by your side, and you never stopped them. You encouraged it and encouraged it and encouraged it. And now all of a sudden, because Soros is Jewish, but he's not for Israel, okay?
He's not for Israel?
No.
Interesting.
Okay, he's actually been, he's sympathetic to the Palestinians.
Oh,
that's why Ben Shapiro and his ilk were like, oh, you wanna do a conspiracy theory about this Jew who's controlling all the politicians? Yeah, who cares? We don't mind anti-Semitism at all, because he's not sufficiently loyal to Israel.
I didn't know that about George Soros. So let me just say, I want all the money out. I don't want George Soros buying prosecutors in cities like Los Angeles.
Or anyone.
Or anyone, okay? I want all the money out.
Yes.
But yeah, I've never once heard Ben Shapiro talk about the influence of the Adelsons and how incredibly nefarious that is, especially when all of their lobbying has to do with benefiting a foreign country on the dime of US taxpayers. But anyway, yes, he is attacking what he now refers to as the exceptionally conspiratorial right wing. He feels that they have taken control of social media, which is super rich, seeing as X and TikTok are becoming Israeli propaganda machines, and it's not an accident. It was very much planned. If you don't know, let me remind you of what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said recently himself.
But we have to fight with the weapons that apply to the battlefields in which we're engaged. And the most important ones are the social media. And the most important purchase that is going on right now is TikTok. TikTok, number one. And I hope it goes through because it can be consequential. And the other one, what's the other one? That's most important. X. X.
If you didn't catch this, later go back and listen to that clip again, because as Netanyahu asks, and the most important purchase is, and a bunch of people are like yelling out like what Israel needs to buy up online to basically control the narrative. One of the influencers said, bots?
Because they know the Israelis are doing bots all over social media.
It's so
they're like, oh, we buy the bots, right? And then that influences everybody and makes it seem like people are on Israel's side when it's just like 3 of us, right?
Yep.
And he's like, oh, no, not that one. TikTok, that's bigger.
Shapiro said young people are drawn to the conspiracy theories against Israel because of the message that the problems in their own lives are not their fault and they can be solved by externalizing those problems onto a different group, adding, quote, you get a lot more likes and clicks if you are promoting an anti-Israel, anti-Jewish. I don't see people promoting an anti-Jewish. I mean, look, there are definitely some, handles like unidentified people, anonymous people on X who say gross anti-Semitic things. But that's not what's bothering Shapiro. The anti-Semitic comments on social media have existed forever. What's bothering Shapiro is the criticism toward Israel. And he is conflating it with anti-Semitism. Let me just repeat for the billionth time. Being critical of a foreign country does not make you anti-Semitic. Being critical of the Armenian government is not gonna lead to me accusing you of being anti-Armenian. You're being critical of a foreign government. It is your right to do that without being smeared, by the way, as someone who's hateful or bigoted. Anyway, anti-Jewish agenda, then if you are doing the opposite, virtually every conspiracy theory ends up pointing at the Jews because the narrative needs a villain, and it is easier to recycle an old one than to make an honest argument. Well, the honest argument, Ben, is that the US taxpayers who have gone into debt to bankroll Israel's expansionist project are sick of it, both on the left and the right. They're sick of their money bankrolling atrocities all over the Middle East. They're sick of a foreign country, Israel, goading the United States into fighting wars on its behalf. Whether it be Libya, Syria, Iraq, Iran. How many American soldiers need to die on behalf of Israel for you to feel that this country is adequately pro-Israel to your liking?
Yeah, so we keep saying Israel and they keep saying Jews.
On purpose.
Yeah, and we keep saying, guys, don't do that because then you're smearing all Jews. And they go, yeah, I know that we're smearing you by pretending that you're smearing all Jews when it's actually us doing it. Well, you never said Jews, you kept saying Israel, but who cares? We're gonna lie about it, right? So that goes to the point, I'm gonna go back to Soros for a second. Because, okay, now Adelson's on the right. So you can say, well, maybe he was criticizing Soros because he's on the left and he helps Democrats and Adelson's helping the Republicans, etc. So it's blah, blah, blah. Okay, but wait a minute. Haim Saban is another billionaire who's a massive Democratic donor. He might be a larger donor to the Democrats than George Soros is. Now, Haim Saban, just like George Soros, happens to be a Jewish billionaire, right? But Soros is sympathetic to the Palestinians. Haim Saban is a massive pro-Israel zealot, okay? And he bought off the Clintons and almost, him along with many other donors have gotten the entire Democratic establishment on their side. So it's interesting as Saban and Soros are pouring money into the Democratic politicians, that guys like Ben Shapiro and almost all the other right wing never once criticized Haim Saban.
Well, he's a good boy.
Never once even mentioned his name. Soros, right? So it isn't about being Jewish. It's about whether you're pro-Israel or not sufficiently pro-Israel. So since Soros was not sufficiently enough pro-Israel, they smeared the living crap out of him. Even if it's an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory, they didn't care at all, right? But when it's Saban doing the same exact thing, they're like, no, shh. No, he's helping purchase the Democrats for Israel, so you're not allowed to talk about him at all. So now break down the quote that Anna read you, the first one. He says, the right-wing voters are trying to pretend the problems in their lives are not their fault. So what he's saying is, hey, right-wingers, it's your fault. All your problems are yours, okay? No one else created them. Shut up and blame yourself. Okay, fascinating. But wait a minute. Now look, if you didn't work hard enough for this or that, I get it, right? But on the other hand, if you worked your ass off, but now housing prices are higher because Blackstone is buying all the houses and driving up demand and supply, driving up demand so that it moves the prices up, that's not entirely your fault. Well, our politicians could stop them, but they're choosing not to. Well, then that's partially the politicians' fault. Wait a minute, drugs cost us much less than other countries, developed nations, same exact drugs, but they charge us an arm and a leg. And they say we're not even allowed to negotiate drug prices. Why? Because our politicians said that we don't have to negotiate drug prices. So it's not our fault that drug prices are high, it's our politicians' fault. And are the politicians all being bought off by Jews? No. They're being bought off by ExxonMobil and Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson and Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and all these countries and companies, but also foreign governments like Israel, right? So we're fair and honest about it. We tell you what is actually causing the problem. But Ben Shapiro doesn't want you to see what's actually causing the problem, which is money in politics overall. Because he's not just in favor of Israel, he's also in favor of corporate rule. So that's why you've seen him defend giant corporations and the super rich over and over again. And he says whenever you criticize legitimately them bribing our politicians legally, he goes, oh, you're just being bitter. It's all your fault. You should work harder. You're a bum, right-wingers. And you're now trying to blame good, honest people who are supporting Israel. Shut up and give me your money. Otherwise, it's your fault, you anti-Semite. Believe in crazy conspiracy theories. Shut up and listen to my show, and shut up and support Israel. That's what he's saying, by the way, not here in America. He went to Israel to say that.
Yeah, that's right. He was speaking to the Jerusalem Post. Final thing I'll mention is that one of the statements that Shapiro has made in the past is that he would be willing to change the United States Constitution so Benjamin Netanyahu would be allowed to run for president of the United States.
Oh, come
that's
on.
That's who Ben Shapiro is. Anyway, we got to take a break. So let's do that. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about how Ghislaine Maxwell is doing at the Club Med of prisons, a place where she does not belong.
All right, Tattered Remnant writes in on TYT.com. You guys, Green is a construction company owner. They use lots of immigrant illegal labor. Her business is being directly affected. Her money is being attacked, and she's at least smart enough to count the profits. No, that's fair, and she does.
That is a good point.
That's definitely a good point about the construction company, and so look. Number one, is she going to vote the right way? If she votes the right way to stop these mass deportations, I'll take it no matter what her reasoning is. But it is our job to point that out. So thank you for bringing that up. And that could be something that's influencing her. And where it would make a difference, guys, is if she only cares about it on issues that affect her, but doesn't care about it when it affects the actual voters, then we'll call her out on that.
Yeah.
And we all got to hold all the politicians accountable together, okay? But so far, I have seen her be honest on a number of issues. That's why it seems to fit into that pattern as well, okay? Jenks Left Tricep of Fury says, when Trump even gets near someone with immense wealth, he immediately starts drooling and acts like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. Pathetic. That is so true. And he'll literally start to slouch. He has such, God, I'd love to play poker with Trump. Like, look at this, I got a foot, nothing. He just always spits out what's at the top of his mind. Anyway, Joseph Yakim writes, and Anna and Cenk, yesterday I wore my TYT t-shirt that has been an American flag, a heart, and a Palestinian flag with a TYT cap. I got lots of compliments about the t-shirt. Asked me where I got it. I pointed to my TYT family. I love it, Joseph. So shoptyt.com. The Free Palestine collection, 100% of the profits goes to Palestine Children's Relief Fund. So check that out. That's the shirt that I wear all the time. Super proud to wear it. And yes, I get compliments. I get people passing me notes saying, hey, I love the shirt, brother. By the way, you got to pass notes sometimes. Otherwise, if you just say, hey, I like Palestinians as human beings, you might get fired. So that's kind of freedom we have in America. Mongoose Dragon says the Zionists have overplayed their anti-Semitism card, and more Americans are catching on. Yes, it's the most disgusting card there is, played 2,000 times over on people who don't deserve it at all, just for Israel, Israel, Israel. Eclectic miscellaneous. So basically, the best case scenario will be that Israel will go back to pre-October 7th, where they keep Gazans in an open air prison, except that almost all of their houses and buildings have been destroyed. That's right, Eclectic. It's nothing to celebrate. Israel committed a genocide, now has half of Gaza, and that is our best case scenario. And it's not likely to end there either, but mainstream media will tell us how great they are. Kelly Kay says, I despise them. Can you tell it? Can you tell how much I loathe all of the liars in mainstream media who have lied to you your whole life about everything? Nothing they say is true. It's all meant to make you go back to sleep. Don't fight for power and representation. Don't fight for democracy. Accept the status quo. Accept that you are ruled, okay? I loathe them. Kelly Kay says, Trump saying the quiet part out loud and thanking Miriam Adelson for her donations of political influence to move the US Embassy in Israel was shocking. And nothing's shocking with that guy. But you know what would be shocking is if mainstream media covered it.
Can I just say?
Can you watch cable news tonight to see if a single one of those clowns, those asshats covers it?
We're running out of time, it's okay.
Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys, more news.
All right, let's get to our next story.
The Supreme Court is back, and they rejected today an appeal by Ghislaine Maxwell to overturn her conviction. That means her only chance of getting out of prison is a pardon from you. Is that something you're?
Who are we talking about?
Ghislaine Maxwell.
You know, I haven't heard the name in so long. I can say this, that I'd have to take a look at it. I would have to take a look. Did they reject that?
She wanted to appeal her conviction.
And what happened?
They said that they were not going to hear her appeal.
I see. Well, I'll take a look at it. I will speak to the DOJ.
The correct answer was no, I will not pardon her, especially after I transferred her from a high security prison to the Club Med of prisons, where she is essentially dealing with a situation in which it doesn't even feel like she's in a prison. And in fact, as Donald Trump considers speaking to the DOJ about giving notorious child sex groomer a pardon, we're actually learning about the cushy treatment Ghislaine Maxwell is receiving in the Texas prison that she moved to just a few months ago. So before we get to those details, Cenk, what do you think? Ghislaine Maxwell, pardon or no?
So why do you have to look into it?
It's outrageous.
Like, we already know, like, first of all, she's convicted of sex trafficking. Second of all, the biggest groomer in American history. What are you looking into? Like, how much you loved her in the past, how many notes you wrote for her, how many parties you went with to her, how many pictures you have with her. What are you looking into?
How much compromise she might have on you?
Yeah.
I don't know.
If they say to you, hey, are you thinking of pardoning Charles Manson or Jeffrey Dahmer? Do you go, well, I'm gonna have to look into that. That would be a super strange answer. And that's the kind of answer we just got.
So Maxwell was originally serving her sentence in a high security facility in Tallahassee, Florida. But then all of a sudden, Trump had his former personal lawyer, Todd Blanche, hit her up, have a little bit of a conversation with her. and get a statement from Ghislaine Maxwell in which she said, no, Trump didn't do anything wrong. No, I don't have any dirt on Trump. And then was moved to the low security prison known as the Camp Bryan Federal Prison. Okay, so let's talk about what that prison has been like for her. She's having a grand old time. At Federal Prison Camp Bryan, guards usually don't carry weapons. During the early morning shift at Bryan, as few as 6 guards oversee more than 600 inmates, according to a 2021 report on staffing levels. Fun. Now, get a load of this. Bryan's prison cells, which can house up to 4 inmates, don't even have doors, former inmates said. By the way, the current inmates there, not fans of hers, and I'll get to that in just a minute. Maxwell's unexpected arrival upset the camp's unusually relaxed atmosphere, leading to more frequent lockdowns, the addition of armed guards, and other changes. Current and former inmates said in interviews that Maxwell appeared to receive unusually favorable treatment at times, sparking resentment from other inmates. So you're dealing with a low security prison situation where you don't have armed guards. Then a notorious child sex groomer shows up, and suddenly you need to have armed guards, which, how about you keep her in the prison she belonged in? But okay, so the other inmates are irritated by that. And then she has been getting favorable treatment, special treatment. So under Federal Bureau of Prisons rules, prisoners with sex crime convictions like Maxwell's don't ordinarily qualify for low security facilities like Camp Bryan. Candidates for medium security prisons are usually those convicted for white collar crimes like fraud. They're not violent criminals, but they have committed crimes. They usually have shorter sentences, or they already serve the bulk of a lengthy sentence and are viewed as a low flight risk. Now, at this prison in particular, she has the 4th longest running sentence of the 600+ inmates, but is getting the most attention. So guards brought Maxwell her meals in her dormitory room. She was escorted to the recreation area for late night workouts and was allowed to shower after other inmates were confined to their bunks at 8 p.m. During one weekend in mid-August, while hundreds of inmates were supposed to be having leisure time, they were instead told to go back to their dorms, their dormitories. Ghislaine Maxwell was the only one not on lockdown, and she met with several important visitors in the prison's chapel instead. It couldn't be determined whom Maxwell met with in the chapel that day. One inmate recalled seeing Maxwell return to the Madison dormitory unit that day with a smile on her face. When the inmate asked Maxwell about the meeting, she said it went really well, but didn't share any other information. Thanks, Trump. I'm sure she really appreciates the lovely digs she's now imprisoned in. Now, Ghislaine Maxwell was popular with reporters outside of the prison, but inside of the prison, she was met with a lot of hostility and has been called a pedophile. And I didn't know about this word, a chomo, which is a prison slur for child molesters. They've been calling her that repeatedly, which is, I think, an accurate moniker. One inmate who had just been transferred from another facility walked into Maxwell's room and told her she liked her hair. Maxwell politely asked her to leave the room, according to another inmate who witnessed the incident. The witness recalled the new inmate screaming at Maxwell that she didn't belong here. The new arrival was removed by guards and reassigned to another dormitory. But again, it didn't end there. The warden called a town meeting for inmates. She warned that if inmates made threats to Maxwell, put her in any sort of danger, or talked to the press about her, they would be shipped to a harsher facility, people familiar with the matter said. And they made good on that threat because one person actually was sent to another facility. Christiane Irwin, a 46-year-old Texas accountant who had been convicted of defrauding a law firm where she worked, said in a telephone interview that she could discuss Maxwell only in general terms because of the prohibition. One day after she spoke to a Journal reporter on a phone line monitored by prison officials, her prison email privileges were suspended. So sorry, she wasn't transferred, but she was punished. Within days, she was moved. Within days, she had been moved to the higher security Houston Federal Detention Center.
Of course. Notice that of all the transgressions, the one that is the worst is talking to the press about her. Okay, so remember Epstein when he was convicted earlier of sleeping with underage girls. They just pled it down to soliciting prostitutes. They were not prostitutes, they were underage girls he was raping. And they let him serve his prison sentence only at night. So he could stay out all day working, okay? And then he would just use the prison as a hotel room. Now she's moved to something that Anna referred to as a Club Med prison. Its nickname is Club Fed. So everybody knows it. And on top of that, as she just explained to you, she gets room service there. She's allowed to make all the other prisoners go to bed while she roams the place and has it to herself. She has extra privileges. And the entire description, Anna, made me think of Pablo Escobar. When he was sent to prison in Colombia, he actually ran the prison, and it was like a luxury stay. And he got some of his homeboys, and they lived in glamour and in great wealth. And here she is at Club Fed ordering people around.
Yep.
And if you cross the worst child sex trafficker in American history, you're going to be moved out of the prison and sent to a much harsher prison, because our government is protecting the sick pedophiles that raped our children.
Yeah, including Israeli ones from the Israeli government who were allowed to attempt to rape teenagers in America, and then are allowed to fly back to Israel with really no way of ensuring that they're going to get punished for what they attempted to do. It's just gross. The whole thing is gross. But hey, you know what? Donald Trump making Chomo life great again.
Yeah, so for all the talk of groomers, well, we know who the groomer is, and they're treating her like royalty. So if you're telling us that Epstein and Maxwell are not being protected by the government, you must either be an escaped mental patient or a mainstream media reporter. No, it's super weird that our government is protecting incredibly terrible and dangerous criminals. So why they're doing that is what we all care about, because it's not just about them, and it's not even just about the terrible pedophilia. It brings up the much, much larger question: who's controlling our government and why? All right, look, we're gonna take a break here. We've turned the bonus episodes public now, thanks to the great generosity of our members. But we'll do a short story time for you guys at the very end for the members. But we got a couple of great interviews and an update on crowdsourcing the revolution. Some wonderful updates, all of that when we return. So we might have a guest here from the flotilla, but before we do that, I wanted to update you on our Crowdsourcing the Revolution project, and we have a bunch of great updates that I love. So a number of you guys had suggestions. For example, somebody suggested, hey, why don't you guys reach out to the Palestine Children's Relief Fund? Cenk interviewed that guy Turks from there, and you guys give the proceeds of Free Palestine to those guys. Maybe they could help with the kids of Gaza, right? You know, we got kidsofgaza.com, show their pictures, bios, etc. So we reached out to Turks from PCRF, and he said, yeah, we'd love to help. So excellent idea, guys. Already on board. They say they have photos of many children who have been evacuated, and that's maybe a good start. So now he's gonna put us in touch with their communications team, and we're gonna start to build this, okay? So then a second person, Aaron Gustafsson, decided he's already gonna take initiative. I love that. So go get him, Aaron. So Aaron started building, he says, quote, started working on a gallery concept where we could have all the photos and clicking on any of them would show overlay with the child's photo, bio, etc. And he started building the code for it and open source. Love it. I don't know what any of that means, but that looks good to me. And it feels like, this looks like we're gonna probably fill in the red places. It's got the coding up top. And Aaron also created a channel on Discord for the Kids of Gaza project. He and others are planning to operate, also attend our Operation Hope working group meetings. So now everything is Operation Hope as we do this together, right? But the original Operation Hope guys still have a working group where they've already, a lot of them have trained, done the research before, done other things, and they're ready to help. So Aaron is going to attend, along with others, the Operation Hope working group on Wednesday, this Wednesday. You can register at tyt.com/hope and also take part in it. So we've seen guys in the Operation Hope working group before create websites out of nowhere. Michael, I'm looking at you, and done an amazing job of building X, Y, and Z. And so I think we could build this one together. The fact that I'm now seeing the beginnings of the infrastructure for it is awesome. And then we'll take the pictures and bios that Palestine Children's Relief Fund gives, and then others found lists of all the dead in different times from different media organizations. And we're gonna keep reaching out to other Muslim American groups to see if they can send in pictures and bios. Because guys, I wish the war was over, and I wish this peace treaty was real. And here's how it could be real, right? If Israel actually withdrew from Gaza, and an Arab coalition, not Hamas, actually ran Gaza, and they got on a pathway to two-state solution, and Israel didn't bomb Gaza again, oh my God, I would be ecstatic, okay? But none of that's gonna happen. Israel is squatting on 53% of Gaza, and they're threatening to take more. We covered it earlier on the show. Smotrich and Netanyahu saying, no, we're gonna keep on going. This campaign is not over, and they're looking to take more land. And when they do, we're gonna have to draw people's attention to the plight of the Palestinians and their children again. And unfortunately, the numbers don't do it justice. You hear 20,000 kids are dead. It's not gonna affect you nearly as much as if you see 2 kids' pictures and their stories and how they died. So we came up with the idea of starting with Hind Rajab, since we already have that information. Jack Callahan, who's in the Operation Hope working group, sent that info in already on the picture and the bio. And now Aaron's trying to build a website, and the working group is gonna help him. So guys, if at the end of this process, you see this amazing website and you see it affecting people, you're gonna feel amazing about making that happen. Okay, so that's on the Kids of Gaza project. Oh, and Samantha Burma had one more idea. And guys, if you don't mind me using your name, send in your name. If you don't, say anonymous or point out you don't want your name used, right? But Samantha just wrote in with a kind of pop culture idea, saying, I think it would be cool if we could have a We Are the World song for Palestine. That would be amazing, but you would have to pull in a lot of artists, etc. Eric Clapton, Macklemore, and many other artists are very much in favor of ending the genocide, protecting Palestinians, etc. Getting them together would be an enormous task. And by the way, a lot of folks in the music industry would then call them anti-Semites and try to ruin their careers, right? So that's just baked in. But look, one thing that I love is, and I said this on the show, I'm beginning to say it, I'm gonna say it much more going forward. When you're at a public event, every public event should have a free Palestine chant. You're at a basketball game, you're at a football game, you're at a concert. Free Palestine, free Palestine. Let them hear you in Gaza. Let them hear you in Tel Aviv. And most important, let them hear you in Washington, D.C. Free Palestine, everywhere. Because the Palestinians are not free. Eclectic Miscellanea, who's also part of the Operation Hope working group, made a great point earlier in the show where he said, so let me get this right. The best case scenario is that we return to pre-October 7th, which was a brutal 57-year occupation of Gaza and the West Bank, and all the buildings in Gaza are destroyed, and there's over 200,000 casualties when you include the dead and the injured, and Israel keeps half of Gaza. So where's the win for the Palestinians? And the answer is there's never a win for the Palestinians. And the job of American media is to come in and smooth it over and go, oh, no, it's okay. We got the peace. The 20 Israelis are back, the only real people. Okay, who cares about the rest of them? And so we're gonna get those kids both alive and dead, and we're gonna show America. And if America's okay with it, and our sick, disgusting politicians and our sick, disgusting media are okay with looking at the kids' pictures, reading about them, and going, yeah, I don't mind that Israel murdered them. 1, 2, 8, 48, 158, 2,870, 18,812, over 20,000. You can look at 20 of those kids, let alone 20,000, and you still say you're okay with it. All right, well, at least we know we can't reach you because you've lost your moral compass and you've become pro-genocide. So let's make them look at the kids so they know what they're doing with our money and see if they can live with it. Live with themselves and their conscience. Okay, now the drug bill. Look, guys, we're planning to do an interview on Gaza, so I mainly stuff prepared on that. On the drug bill, I don't know how much to tell you guys. So I will leave it somewhat vague here, but I want to tell you so you're encouraged. There is a Democratic congressman and a Republican congressperson who previously were not looking at the bill to lower drug prices, and they are now looking at it and considering whether they're going to support the bill. And that is awesome. You did that, okay? One was one that was suggested I reach out to. The other one, you guys, hundreds and hundreds of you already reached out to. And so I can't report yes or no yet, but I do know we've made progress. And imagine if they started to come in more and more and more. And then the press is useless. The podcasters and the rest of them will start talking about, yeah, wait a minute. Why are we paying higher drug prices than all the other developed nations? Why is that acceptable? If it turns out Trump wrote an executive order and now the Democrats are okay with it and they've turned it into a bill, both the Democrats and the Republicans together, why don't we just pass it and have lower drug prices? So, and by the way, let's get on now that I said that out loud, one of the other things we should tell is the podcasters, because the media is useless. I mean, you could tell Jake Tapper till you're blue in the face. Jake Tapper's never gonna care. In fact, he's gonna work against you to try to bury you, right? So stop, I'm saying to myself, stop telling mainstream media, who cares? They're useless and worse, okay? So go tell Tim Dillon and Theo Vaughn and Joe Rogan and Andrew Schultz, not in a bad way, in a good way. In a good way. Oh my God, did you know we're trying to, not they are, you're trying to help a coalition build hope in this country, left and right together, asking for lower drug prices. Guys, before I keep going, now a lot of you have written in and I wanna read your comments, but the guest couldn't make it. Okay, that's okay, we have another guest for you guys in about 15 minutes. They're super interesting. Unfortunately, they were abused, not having anything to do with Operation Hope and crowdsourcing the revolution, but they were abused by Christian nationalists. It's a really interesting story. That'll be at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. But for now, stay right here on crowdsourcing the peaceful revolution. So I'm gonna read some of your comments. Jack Callahan wrote in, we could send pictures of those kids to the Hill. Absolutely, one of the ideas we had last week is, on Instagram, on TikTok, and on other social media, you see the kid's picture, you read the kid's story, and you don't find out if they're dead or alive to the end. And so if people say, oh no, that's too emotional, well, they killed the kids. So I mean, what do you want me to do? I need to use everything I can to stop them from killing more kids. So, and Jack, could we take those social media posts? Could we take the site and send it to Capitol Hill? Absolutely. And if they say, oh no, those dead kids' pictures are bothering us, good, they're supposed to. I hope they haunt you. Eclectic wrote in, that's awesome. It's so heartening to see that after less than a week, that the TYT fam has already had tons of idea and is making a difference. Absolutely. And guys, remember, the battle is joined. A lot of libertarians out there, a lot of conservatives out there now. We're all on the same team. They've been dividing us the entire time. So if we get into culture wars and we go back on different teams and we yell at each other, no problem. That's also called America. That's also called freedom, right? But both sides definitely want lower drug prices. Both sides definitely want us to stop funding genocide and stop funding an out of control country that never listens to us. And today, Trump, you saw it on the main show, saying, oh yeah, I'm doing this for Miriam Adelson, and calls out Miriam Adelson. Who the hell wants to be run by Miriam Adelson? What part of democracy is that? And isn't it funny that the mainstream media has all these problems with Donald Trump and all these problems about, oh, he's destroying democracy. But when he says, oh yeah, I'm changing American foreign policy because I got bribed by Miriam Adelson, not a goddamn word. All of a sudden the cat's got their tongue. Jake Tapper can't figure out how to criticize Trump. Anderson Cooper, none of them can figure out I don't know how to criticize Trump. How about you say he took $337 million from the Adelsons and works for the Adelsons? No, shh, that would be criticizing Israel. You can't do that, that's third rail, you'll get fired. George, the most unique of the jungle dragons, wrote in, open source means no one owns the code, so anyone can jump in and collaborate. Great. I said on day one, no pride of authorship, guys. So if I tried to build all those websites here at TYT, we'd never make it. So I'm saying you build it, and if people come to your website, great. You do something amazing and people come to the thing you built, wonderful. That's why it's called crowdsourcing, okay? We can't do this on our own. And by the way, as I also said on the first day, we might fail. And if I do, and then I come back and try again 6 months from now, they'll say, oh yeah, there goes Cenk again, trying to make a difference. Yeah, I will, and come back again and again. The time that it'll work, guys, is the time when you guys get behind it. Because me by myself, or even TYT as big as it is by itself, isn't gonna get the job done. It's too small. We need everybody participating, but not everybody is in 350 million people. All we need is like 1% of 1% of that working on this. I swear to you, I can show you step by step how you could totally regain democracy, regain your government, regain your representatives as your representatives, instead of representatives of the donor class. If you heard the beginning about Israel, guys, this isn't about Israel. Israel happens to be one of the issues we're working on because they've taken so much money from us and we're sick of it. And they've spent it on genocide and war crimes. And so in the old days, at least they used to build things. Now the current government is a mess, but that's not the main issue. The main issue is the corruption itself that allows any foreign government and any corporation to buy our politicians. Don Dada Dragon says, anyone involved in TYT Hope, thank you for what you've done and will do. You guys seriously are my Obi-Wan. Well, thank you for saying that, brother. And so many wonderful people out there who are part of Operation Hope. Rebel Dragon says, Michael Jackson already wrote a song about Palestine. People should check it out. Of course, it was never allowed to get airtime until recently. Yeah, did you guys know that? Michael Jackson wrote a song about Palestine, and then Sony killed the song and wouldn't let it go out. And then he died a little while afterwards. Kofefe 19, so you could look that up, by the way. Ben Kofe 19 wrote in, Cenk, if you're crowdsourcing the audience, I'm sure enough of the members are musically talented and could put together something. I'm a good singer, and maybe they're also good writers, musicians, etc. You don't need to get celebrity musical artists to put something together. Guys, God bless. I suck at music. I couldn't tell if it was good if my life depended on it. So create something, and if people love it, they'll gravitate towards it, right? And then that could be the anthem, and and you can create a win-win, right? So if it's your song that everybody's singing to free Palestine, that'd be beautiful. So go for it, collaborate if you can, it'd be great. Benjamin takes a page out of the Israeli lobbyist playbook. I don't know if you're doing it on purpose, Ben, but writes in, make flyers with QR codes to that site and stick them up everywhere. Oh, you're not doing that on purpose. Okay, you're right. You could do that. The QR codes, then if you go to it, it brings you to the kidsofgaza.com, right? But the reason I said that is because the other day, Matt Gaetz explained that when he became a congressman, his staff pulled him over and said, the first thing you have to do is go get money from AIPAC. And he's like, really? And they're like, yeah, of course. All the PACs will give you money, but AIPAC's the most important, so you got to go there. Then he goes to the event, and they give him a lapel sticker, and you get that, and you put your name on and stuff. No, in this case, they put a QR code, and then you would go talk to donors who wanted you to support the Israeli government, and then if they liked what an ass kisser you were, and you proved to them you were sufficiently loyal to Israel and not America, they scan the QR code. They go, doop, doop, okay, I bought this politician, who's next? Who's next? This is a literal thing that they do. So if they're scanning our politicians, purchasing them like they're at a grocery store, we can do QR codes for dead kids that they killed with our money. Don Dada Dragon wrote in again, he said, you guys should get Bill Burr to come on and comment on the Fallen and 1A fight. He literally says exactly what you all say. He just has no idea you guys exist. Exposing the comedian court of TYT exposes a bunch of regular folks who aren't major news bingers like normal TYT viewers to the message. Coalitions need numbers. Well, I would love that. And so if anyone's got a way of getting Bill Burr to come on the show, fantastic. So reach out to him, tell him to come on the Young Turks, and we'll follow up. In fact, all of you, and again, always polite. Bill Burr is a great guy. We love Bill Burr. We want Bill Burr on. So reach out to him, say, go on the Young Turks. You'd be shocked at how much they agree with you guys, okay? So this one is a lot more doable. I'll read one last one, and then they're telling me I got to take a break. Itchy Brother Dragon on Twitch says, call Sirota. That one I can do. David Sirota is a great journalist. He's at The Lever. I was actually just reading one of his pieces this weekend, and it's a great piece, and it's about money and politics. So you're absolutely right, and I will call Sirota, and we can get him on here too. And then you remind me that it's on that day. Remind me that it was you who put me over the top and made sure I have him on. All right, actually, last one. Because we already have more action. Doodle Dragon Imran wrote in, I love these ideas and proud of TYT for bringing everyone together on causes with solutions between us over just grievances. I'd like to donate this piece if it'll help for the folks that speak truth to power like yourselves. Love you, Cenk and Anna. Go get him, TYT. And he's the one that built Drew ceasefire one here. Do I have it here? I don't know. That's also part of the Free Palestine collection. And this one is a press badge from the Palestinian Authority areas. It says for peace, for courage, for the truth, for justice, for freedom, for love, for us. And then it has a red handprint, a child's handprint for the blood that's on it. And that is what happened. And by the way, they murdered one of the top Palestinian journalists the day before the ceasefire, because that's what terrorists do. And this terrorist government is now going to demand more money from us very soon, and we'll be told that if we don't give it over, we're hateful bigots. Okay, we're not. We're the exact opposite. And I love you guys for trying to save Palestinian lives and for lowering drug prices and getting money out of politics and ending this corruption once and for all. If they tell you that you hate the left, ask them why, right? And if they tell you, oh, if you're on the right, you should hate the left for everything. If you're on the left, you should hate the right for everything. Ask them, but why should I hate them on the things we agree on? We all hate money in politics, over 90% of the country. We all want lower truck prices. We all want lower housing prices. We all want higher wages. And Marjorie Taylor Greene just said it on Tim Dillon's show, almost verbatim what I just said. No, we're gonna unite. Big portions of us are gonna unite. And then they're gonna be in for a world of trouble. So let's get some momentum here, and they'll try to stop us. And then you'll know that it's working. And I love it. And I love you guys for believing and for having hope and already for coming up with amazing ideas and amazing action and already making a difference. Wait till we build this palace, but we build this temple one brick at a time. Thank you for contributing all those bricks. Give me more. And tomorrow we'll talk more about it. All right, guys, I'm gonna take a break here. We'll come back. Margaret Bronson and Susie Forshee say that they successfully escaped your church, which is an interesting way of putting it. And they lost a majority of their family to what they claim is a cult. And so what happens with cults, of course, is that there's a lot of different factors, but one of them is that if you leave, then you're shunned by family. So did that happen? And do you see why people might think, well, that sounds like a cult?
Yeah. So I could help you on the Steven Sittler case, and there are other cases I could help you, but I'm frankly sorry. I have no idea who those women are.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so then let me ask you as a follow-up then, just in general. So if people leave your church, do they get shunned by their family or no?
No.
That's interesting. So that's Pastor Doug Wilson from Christchurch. We interviewed him very recently and mentioned those two women who'd been speaking out against the church. He says he doesn't know them. Well, now we're going to hear from those two women. So joining me now are Margaret Bronson and Susie Forshee. Margaret's also the founder of Deconstructing Doulas. So welcome, really happy to have you here. Margaret, let me start with you. So when he said he didn't know you guys, was he lying?
No, he's definitely telling the truth. The thing with Doug Wilson is his influence is so vast and enormous. He doesn't know most of the people who've been influenced and affected by his work.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. So he might not know you guys personally. How about you, Susie? You think he knows you or doesn't know you?
No, he definitely doesn't, but I'm happy to introduce myself. And in fact, I think it's about time that he heard from some of the people whose lives that he's had such an impact on,
So Susie, you were, I'll take it one by one. You were in the church, and so what happened to you that's making you speak out?
So I was not in the church, but I was in a homeschool environment. My parents were very anti-establishment. They had no interest in joining any church, but they definitely wanted to be part of nothing and do their own thing. So their story is kind of like they were trying to just not be part of anything that was establishment. And they would go to these homeschool conferences and just collect curriculum. And the funny thing is when you're there, like searching for language arts and logic and Latin, you're gonna come across a lot of the things that Doug has put out for homeschoolers that are fairly good material. But then right alongside them, he will have parenting books and marriage books that also go into great depth and detail about how he thinks you should be living your life that have nothing to do with education or homeschool. So that's how my parents got involved. And in one sense, it might have been better for me if they had had more people kind of regulating them, but they had Doug's books, one under each arm, and just went off. And it was a very unusual childhood, that's for sure.
So wait, Susie, let me get this right though. So your interaction with Doug Wilson is that your parents homeschooled you and they used his books?
Yes.
I got you. And before I turn to Margaret, what was wrong with those books?
Well, they're very explicit. So there's no question as to what you're going to be doing. And there's not any option for like how you're going to implement those things in your life. For instance, starting out when children are very young, there's at least 2 or 3 different parenting books that Doug and Nancy have published that will illustrate how to discipline, when to discipline, how to make sure it hurts, what you should be telling your children as you're disciplining them. And it involves things like, Doug said he wasn't familiar with blanket training, but blanket training is something that homeschoolers, it's just a way of spanking a child in order to train them. And Doug doesn't call it blanket training. He calls it paddywonking. And you can read about that on his blog. You can read about it in all of his books. And it essentially is just a way of suppressing a child's outbursts. And when children are brought up in that kind of environment to like suppress emotion and obey like the first time and not express anything that they're feeling, because that's dangerous and it will get you spanked. I think it sort of primes and prepares children, especially girls. And in my case, it prepared me for the young adult years, which then you're introduced to courtship, which is the alternative, the godly alternative to dating that Doug recommends, that he says is any other way of doing it is sinful, essentially. He doesn't really leave you an out. He's like, the world gives you the option of dating, and there's so much wrong with it. And the godly way to find your spouse is to, if you're a woman, you need to be under authority because you're vulnerable. And so you start out life under your father's authority, and then that's passed on like some sort of mantle of protection to your husband. And that way you don't ever have to be out of the protection of a man, of a man's authority.
Or the control of a man, depending
the
on
control of a man, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it essentially it trains children, especially girls, from day one to be silent. And it doesn't allow a girl, first of all, to object or say no. And then in marriage and young adulthood, it trains the daughter, the wife, eventually to not know how to say no. Which then brings you to the marriage piece, which is also a very obviously unhealthy state to be in. Yeah. I think with Doug, he presents really well as far as being intelligent. He's quite good at logic, but I think it's about time that his thoughts and what goes on in his head and in his books actually gets expressed in, like, this is the fruit, my childhood and my young adulthood is the fruit born of what goes on in Doug's head and in his books.
Yeah. So we're gonna come back to marriage and maybe the blanket training as well. But Margaret, were you in his church or no?
So his church wasn't founded until 98. And even then there was only a few in the country. So we didn't have one close to us. So we got the closest thing, which was a Reformed Baptist church that used his books as a lot of inspiration. But I say that I got a triple dose of Doug because I was in a church where the pastor was deeply inspired by him. And I would say that that's actually a very common occurrence. There's a lot of pastors who read a lot of Doug, but they are not in his denomination, but they run their churches like he says, basically. But I also was classically educated using his textbooks and everything. And then we were also in the Constitution Party, which was all about essentially the Heritage Foundation, Chalcedon, all of that. That we're seeing now in the White House, just back in the 90s and early 2000s. And then now I run a community filled with survivors from Doug Wilson's world, essentially, which Susie's right. A lot of those survivors are, yes, going to be from his denomination, the CREC, but they will also be homeschool alumni, classical or Christian school alumni, and then a lot of PCA, SBC, a lot of other Christian denominations that have been deeply affected by his work.
So Margaret, my guess is they would say, look, we have a certain life philosophy and ideology, and you guys used to be part of that, but you're not part of it now, and you've got a new way of thinking. Why do you guys call yourselves survivors? So we disagree, so what, they would say.
Yeah, for my part, believe it or not, there's no way I would have been able to talk like this about my life any sooner than probably the last 2 or 3 years. And I'm 44. It's taken that long to disentangle my faith from the teachings of Doug and people who are like him. But because when you're indoctrinated with this stuff from birth, and then it's all tangled up with things that you really hold dear, like your faith in God or your beliefs about Jesus Christ, those are very sticky and it takes so long and it affects so many different parts of your life. Like my husband and I dealt with some very weird stuff that worked out in therapy that I didn't understand what was happening because I thought it was normal, but it really was very much attached to the idea that I didn't think I had a voice. And that's been trained in me since I was 2 years old. And that just takes a long time to work out. And when you're finally through it, you feel like you've survived.
Yeah. It's interesting because what you described is actually very similar to what a guest described at the end of last week about Scientology. That they train your mind in a certain way and they get you to believe that it's real. And so then they think that they're fighting aliens and trying to get them off their body and et cetera, but always a reason to control the person. So Margaret, do you consider yourself a survivor?
I do, yeah. In so many ways, being raised in, I'll just say, Doug Wilson's world broke me, and still picking up the pieces today. I think Susie and I both had the best case scenario in that despite going through the courtship process and everything, we married really good men, and both of us did that, or were able to do that because we broke a lot of rules along the way. But our friends who obeyed more and did everything right with the courtship, a lot of them are not even survivors yet because they're still trapped in it and they can't get out. It's pretty much impossible to leave these marriages if you're born into this dynamic. Some of these women don't have driver's licenses or birth certificates. They've never worked a day in their life. Some of them never finished high school, definitely didn't go to college, married right away, started having babies right away, don't have access to bank accounts. The phone's not in their name, the house isn't in their name. And so at that end, their entire world is people who believe the way Doug Wilson doesn't believe that she has grounds for divorce, will take her kids from her. She has no money. They will, leverage the courts to get the kids away from her. We see that happen over and over and over again. And even in my life now, there's still things I'm constantly dealing with, trying to untangle the brain damage from the way that he had parents raise their children and just the indoctrination. I work with a community of survivors, and I'll be on calls with adults, men and women in their 40s, and they're still huddled in fetal position, trying to make a decision they know their parents aren't going to agree with. And they're successful adults, lawyers, doctors, successful adults, generally well adjusted individuals, but their bodies still hold this trauma really intensely.
So that sounds like psychological control, and it is, and a lot of different groups do that. Certainly, religious groups do that a lot, and it depends on which direction you take it. But let's talk about things that might be physical. I'm going to show you guys a clip about women's rights and marital rape from that interview, and then have you guys react to it. Should women have equal rights to men?
Yes, if you're talking about women should have the right to a fair trial, the right to keep and bear arms, the right to free speech, the right habeas corpus. All women should have all the same rights at that level that men do. Yes.
Okay. Do they have a right to say no to their husband sexually?
Yes. If the question is, do I believe that marital rape is okay? No, it's not okay. Not at all.
Okay, so you had a clear answer to that, saying that it's not okay. Susie, do you disagree? Do you think that he's not being honest with us?
Yeah, I think he's not being honest. I think that what he wants to say is that he would never be able to find a scenario which he would say is marital rape within a marriage. He's written an entire book about sex within a marriage. And I know you mentioned a quote to him that he's pretty infamous for. It's pretty grotesque. He quotes himself a lot. It's from the book called Fidelity, How to Be a One-Woman Man. And he describes sex as an act where a man penetrates, conquers, colonizes, plants, and a woman receives, surrenders, and accepts. And he mentioned that that he was not talking about rape in that scenario, but the truth is that came out of a chapter from the book called Rape, and he was using that concept of rape to kind of extrapolate backwards that rape is an exhibition that the authority and submission dynamic within a marriage has gone wrong. And that the real problem is that the woman has said no and defied the husband. And therefore we have, disintegration within the marriage. And the real problem to be solved is the woman saying no. And so he would never say there is such a thing as marital rape, because the problem is that the woman said no. And if the man wants to initiate sex and she says no, it's not rape, it's just marital problems.
Yeah, I'm actually going to read that whole paragraph. Then I'm going to play one more clip and then get Margaret to respond to it. I think that if you read it in its full context, it's actually slightly worse, or maybe significantly worse. Because here's the whole paragraph. When we quarrel, and we can put that graphic back up. It starts in where the red starts on the left-hand side. When we quarrel with the way the world is, we find the world has ways of getting back at us. In other words, however we try, this sexual act cannot be made into an egalitarian pleasuring party. A man penetrates, conquers, colonizes, plants. A woman receives, surrenders, accepts. This is, of course, offensive to all egalitarians, and so our culture has rebelled against the concept of authority and submission in marriage. This means that we have sought to suppress the concepts of authority and submission as they relate to the marriage bed. It certainly does seem like he's saying that they should submit, Margaret, doesn't it?
It sure does. I have a quote as well I'd like to read. And this is from his book, Federal Husband. And he says, actually, that's about something else. But yes, on the note of rape, I lost my train of thought entirely. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. Here, actually, Margaret, before you respond, let me play you the other clip on this same topic, video 6, and then I'll have you respond. In your book, you wrote that, quote, a man penetrates, conquers, colonizes, plants, while, quote, a woman receives, surrenders, accepts.
I would agree. Yeah, a man could conquer, by means of rape. He could penetrate in a rape and all of that, but I wasn't talking about that, right? That wasn't talking about that. So that quote is taken from an article that I wrote, I believe it was for the Huffington Post. I'd have to go back and check, but I was responding to the whole 50 Shades of Grey stuff, and I was talking about rape fantasies, and I was arguing that rape fantasies came from a denial of a normal, healthy interaction between the sexes. So what people have done is they've taken that description that was in the context of a healthy interaction between the sexes, and they tried to portray me as a representative of the thing I was arguing against.
Are you buying it, Margaret?
Yeah, so here's the thing with Doug. The reason I got confused is because we're also at some point going to talk about spousal spankings, and they are pretty much the same thing. I mean, what he said in that quote is that we can't make sex into an egalitarian pleasure party. That's just what those of us out in the normal world would consider healthy, normal sex to be, where both partners are coming together equally with the same amount of rights and privileges and all of the things. And he says that that is what is bad or weird or should be avoided. And this very hierarchical, he plants, it's for his pleasure, and she just has to be willing. Susie's exactly right. He doesn't believe, or he's not for marital rape because he doesn't believe it's possible. He believes that they are mutually exclusive terms. You can't have rape in marriage because he already owns her body. There's that quote from Nancy Wilson that talks about a man not being able to trample. Let me read the quote real quick.
Yeah.
She says, a husband is never trespassing in his own garden, being the wife, though he can be made to feel like he is an intruder. Is your husband sure of a warm response when he approaches you sexually, or does he have to prepare himself for a brush off? Do not withhold him from what God has commanded him to be satisfied with. So it's this shaming language, putting pressure on women and saying that, look, your sexuality was given to your husband by God to keep him on the straight and narrow so your family doesn't end up in ruin, right? And so I have stories in my community of women who they have 7 or 8 children and never once have they given consent. And part of it, going back to what Susie was saying about courtship, is that this is something that we're groomed for from birth. So, one of the things that Doug talks about is if a child is just kind of being squirrely and just kind of acting feisty, they are, quote, looking for a spanking. And so they don't even have to sin or do something bad to get a spanking. They could just look like maybe they're a little agitated or upset. And so then you spank them and then they dance and then they're affectionate. So it's this really awful from birth connection in your nervous system between pain and affection. I must have pain to have affection. And he talks about seeing children's cries for attention and affection, or hunger or whatever, but that's not how he interprets them. He interprets all of them as demands for like controlling a parent or taking their authority. And so he says, you're never supposed to like give into your child's cries. And there's this thing that happens when you get spanked. That's when you really get affection. That's when your parents see you, they hug you afterwards, they're affectionate with you. And so our nervous systems are trained from birth to not be able to believe that we can have connection unless we're obedient and subservient and go along with whatever they say and do, but or want from us, but also to not to do it with a sweet, like Doug said in your interview a couple times, to do it sweetly, right? Mm-hmm. So then you fast forward to being teenagers and you don't start liking somebody. That doesn't come from you. Before you're even of courtship age, everyone's talking about who you're going to be married off to. It's constant conversation. Every time you're in the presence of someone of the opposite sex, it's all about, don't talk to him. Is he into you? It's constant. And then someone is basically chosen for you. And all of a sudden, everyone's giving you attention and approval and affection. And you're doing the thing that you were raised for, that people were afraid you weren't going to be. Maybe you'd end up as a spinster, which is like the worst possible thing that could happen. Also, you'd end up being a stay-at-home daughter, which is one of the things that happens in this community, which is you're not allowed to leave your father's home until you get married. So we have women in their 40s and 50s still living under their father's authority. So I say all that to say, you're groomed with this, like, just go along to get along. That's how you get affection. That's how you get approval. That's how you get safety. And then you're in this courtship situation and have no sex education. And I have many women in my community who didn't even know what sex was on their wedding night. And also because of the courtship rules in these communities, oftentimes this is also the first time they have been alone to have a private conversation with their husband. And that's also supposed to be the first time they have sex with him. And also they don't know when it is. That's not possible to give educated consent, informed consent.
That's right.
So I'm going to play you guys a part of the conversation where we're talking about blanket theory, blanket training, and then talk about the spankings, because I'm curious, and does it differ for a child and a woman, et cetera? So let's first watch. That if a baby walks away from a blanket, you spank it, and corporal punishment to train the baby. Are you in favor of that or no?
No.
No.
So I do believe that toddlers, little kids, need to be disciplined and corrected and so forth. But I've never heard of this blanket theory that you're talking about. But let's say I do believe that if a toddler is told to take his nap and he gets up, I don't have any objection to godly, loving corporal punishment for sensible infractions that are sensibly applied, household rules. But it's sort of I also believe that dictatorial parents who can mistreat their kids that way and are just awful that way, it'd be terrible.
So, Susie, as you pointed out earlier, he calls it pattywonking, which sounds like about the same thing. But I'm curious about the spankings. He says in a loving, godly way, you do corporal punishment, which means hitting someone. So how do you hit someone in a loving way? How do they train people to hit kids versus, are women allowed to be hit, and under what circumstance? And how do they hit them if that's allowed?
Yeah, I think I've never heard anyone say a child was too young for a spanking within this community. I've never heard anyone say they're too young. Rather that get them early before they have a chance to embarrass you in public, essentially, is what the point of it is. And I mean, from my own personal experience, I just have memories of my siblings being held down, pants removed, and really beat pretty hard. And we would help with bath time later. And I remember seeing the welts on their legs and their bum. And it was the same for me. And sometimes my mother, it would be too much for her to handle in a day. There were 5 of us. And she would just resort to a whiteboard on the wall and putting hatch marks under our name so that when my father came home the end of the day, he could take care of it all. And he would just go right into the bedroom and with the wooden spoon and take one child and then the next and then the next, just deliver spanking session. And these were like serious 4 to 5 licks per offense. It wasn't just like a tap on the leg. And you'd go down again for the next one, come back up, confess your sins, cry a little tear. And alongside it, there was the understanding that there was always a potential for the child to cry too much. And if that were the case, be careful, because that could be the child manipulating the parent, and you didn't want that. So sometimes there were spankings for crying too much that followed other spankings. And personally, I was spanked till I was 16 years old, and nothing changed except the pants coming down. That's the only thing that changed. That went away when I was about 7 or 8. But the rest of it was just, there was no creativity in terms of discipline. I used to think, oh, I wish I could be grounded like some of my friends I know. It was so dignified, instead of being turned over and spanked like a slave or whatever. It's humiliating, to be honest.
Yeah. So, Margaret, are wives allowed to be spanked or no?
He never comes out directly and says it. Yeah. But he does say things like this in Federal Husband. He says, a husband must assume full and complete responsibility for the way things are, including his wife's spending habits, television viewing habits, weight, rejection of his leadership, laziness in cleaning the house, lack of responsiveness to his sexual advances, whatever. And specifically what he's talking about there, husband must assume full and complete responsibility. He means before God, for her salvation, for the sake of the family and all of that, that he's literally like responsible to keep her on the straight and narrow, because Doug definitely believes in salvation doesn't just come by faith, it also comes by works. And so your works have to be up to a certain level. So it's the husband's responsibility to keep the wife on the straight and narrow. And so you can imagine in a environment where they're constantly told to be masculine, to be more aggressive, to conquer, to penetrate, that they have this responsibility of eternal conscious torment level weight, and that they are able to dictate to her how to live on things as minuscule as television viewing habits or her weight. You can see how marital rape happens a lot. And then the part that's the real complicity is that when that wife goes to the church leaders, to the men who are influenced by Doug Wilson, she's going to be told that it's all her fault and that she needs to submit to him. One of the things they're really big on is that you don't submit to the man because of anything that he did, or because he's trustworthy, or because he's good, or even because he's right. You submit to him because he is the husband, and that is your job to do that. And if he's wrong, the wife would still be blessed for having obeyed her husband. And so he's like, I didn't say you could, spank your wives, but he created the exact perfect environment and doubled down on it many, many times, even after 30 years of being confronted with survivors. He's just only doubled down on it. on the setting of the stage for it to happen.
So, okay, but he doesn't say it. And on corporal punishment for children, the states usually do allow it within certain degrees, and then they have different judgment calls on what crosses the line and doesn't cross the line. So, and then on marital rape, he says no, we don't do it, and you guys explain the context for that, et cetera. So, but bottom line here is, it seems that they're mainly doing psychological control, and I don't underplay that at all. The same thing with the Scientologist guy that we interviewed. It really kind of captures your mind when you're young. It tells you what the world is, and it tells you a completely twisted version of reality. And in this case, it involves obeying men, right? Which I always find to be absurd, because I partly asked him about this in the interview too. What if the shoe was on the other foot and we men had to obey women? All of a sudden, not so good, right? And so, but even if you say, well, that's because men and women are different. All right, then if you're a guy, why don't you pick a random other guy and obey him your whole life and see how you like it? Okay, so my guess is that you would not like it very much, because nobody wants to obey a random dude, right? We don't have any magical powers as guys to know better than everyone else, and certainly not all guys, and let alone any of us. So I agree with you guys completely. As a world, as a way of looking at the world, ideology, philosophically, et cetera. But the last question I want to ask you guys is there anything that could be done about it? So if it is mainly an ideology and it is legal, yes, the fact that they control kids from such an early age, the way that I would argue, whether it's Scientology or this or any other cult, does some form of brainwashing, kind of like mainstream media does at large. But anyways, so they do some sort of brainwashing, but I don't know what can be done about it. Is there anything that Susie, let's start with you, that you could do?
I have always felt like some of the power, and this goes for a lot of history too, some of the power that people like Doug have held is that he claims to have God and scripture on his side. And I think some of the work to be done is to be thoughtful about how we talk about faith and how that mixes in with rules and regulations, because he's not the only one out there trying to do this. There's plenty of others that through time and history have tried to say, well, God's on my side, and this is my interpretation is the interpretation of the Bible and of our faith. And I think that the work to be done is to separate out the figure of Jesus Christ from what Doug is saying and look at the fruit. And Jesus Christ gave us a great way of looking at people like this. He said, you will know them by their fruit. And that's huge for people. I think that's an instinct that all humans have. We always get a feeling about something's not right. And it's just because someone's not turning out like fruit the way they're preaching. Doug promises things that are very high and holy, but what follows him is abuse and people who need to deconstruct and go to therapy and emotional damage. And I think getting smart about extracting faith, because faith tends to have a lot of power for people. When you stand there and you say, I've read the Bible a lot and I'm going to write about it, and this means, God will approve of you if you do these things this way. It holds power. I know, because of 20 years of trying to extract that. It was the faith mixed with these rules that made it so powerful for me.
And Margaret, so is there a legal remedy to this, or it's just Doug influences people in a certain way, and then you try to influence them back and with all the things that you have at your disposal?
Honestly, I think this is on the church, the American church. It's on Christians and pastors all over America to say he's not us. He denies many of the basic tenets of the Christian faith, and yet he was bragging on his show just a couple weeks ago about how they've taken over Southern Seminary and they wanted to buy out Christianity Today, and they were joking about taking over Wheaton, and they are constantly talking about taking over evangelicals, and evangelicals keep welcoming them in with open arms while they tear people away from their faith and teach them these other things that are not just deeply damaging to the church, but now we see on a national level, on an international level, are damaging the whole country, the whole world. These ideas have power, and the church has to stand up to them.
Yeah, so we like to be fair on the Young Turks, so if anybody wants, they could watch my interview with Pastor Doug Wilson as well, where he explains his point of view. And we got into other topics as well, including slavery and what are the role of non-Christians when Christian nationalism wins. He explains that we still retain some rights, but we're not allowed to be in government. That's only for Christians. So that's another interesting thing that he's trying to influence folks towards. And
Can I say something about that real quick?
Yeah, go ahead, Margaret.
Is that all right? Okay, because this is really important. So his 500-year plan, which by the way is quite audacious, his 500-year plan, the way that he was talking to you and saying, yeah, under a certain threshold, we can have, Muslims, Hindus, atheists, whatever. You'll have all the rights and privileges, but you just can't vote or be lawmakers or whatever. The reason that that's his plan is because it's a 500-year plan. He's going to control education. So yeah, you can be here, but your children are going to be educated in his schools and indoctrinated the way Susie and I were. And so in a generation or two, it'll all come out in the wash and he'll have what he wanted. So that's why he is so gracious to allow some people of different faiths to come in.
Okay.
Yeah.
But of course they can't represent America, right? Yes. Or their fellow citizens.
Piggyback.
Yeah, sorry.
I'd love to piggyback on the rest of that. That's a really good point. When you can get into the education scene, you really do control a lot. And that is the story of how I was exposed to it. And my parents they weren't looking to join a cult. They weren't even really looking for parenting books. They were looking for education materials. And Doug, because he is so active and influential in that circle, and I gotta say, classical education is pretty good. Like I homeschooled my kids in that method until I realized we were up to our necks in politics at like the 6th and 7th grade level. I was like, why are these kids debating like policy? This is weird. And come to find out, I was tracing the threads back to where all of these curriculum came from, and it's there. Doug and people like him are very interested in influencing children to think and practice thinking a certain way. One of the quotes from the Classical Conversations curriculum is homeschool classical curriculum for homeschoolers. Is we teach children how to think, not what to think. But then they proceed to spend the first 2 to 3 years memorizing everything, including like history, sentences about history that are very questionable. And after a few years of that, I was just like, this is so insidious. I didn't even see it coming, and I should have been aware.
Yeah, so I'll land on 2 quick things there. In the madrasas in Turkey, which are not that common, they mostly have public and private education in Turkey, a little bit more of a secular country. But in the madrasas that exist, they often have them memorize the Quran in Arabic. Except Turks don't speak Arabic. They speak Turkish, totally different language. So the kids are forced to learn this incredibly long book in a language they don't even understand. So but obedience is the key. Whenever you have fundamentalism of any religion, obedience and submission are the top things that you were taught. Do not have thoughts of your own. We are going to replace your thoughts with our thoughts, and you're going to be made to do that. And by the way, that of course connects back to education. And that's why when Obama did this super benign thing, George W. Bush, we saw him do it, almost every president does it. He went to some random school for an event, and they're like, that's it, he's trying to indoctrinate our children. Why? Because it's projection. They're trying to indoctrinate our children in this direction. So, all right, Margaret Bronson and Susie Forshey, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your experience.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
No problem. All right.